Okay, we're going to call to order the regular city council meeting of May 26, 2020. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Dixon.
Here.
Bavacqua.
Here.
Albrecht.
Here.
Keithley.
Here.
Peterson.
Here.
Sage.
Here.
Salvia.
Here.
Thank you. Now we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United
States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back from Memorial Day break. Even though, as somebody said, every day seems the same anymore. First we're on to public comment, schedule or not. We are fortunate to have an update from our state senator, Mallory McMorrow. So welcome to Rochester, and thank you for giving us some of your time and for your update. So welcome.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Good evening, Mayor, members, and glad to be able to participate remotely and see all of you. We have a lot of updates that I'm going to run through really quickly, and then I'm happy to open it up to any questions. So since this outbreak began, our office really pivoted almost 100% to constituent services. All of kind of our legislative priorities that we had been working on prior to the outbreak of COVID were put on hold, and we really focused 100% of everybody's time, effort, and energy on making sure people could find access to resources, could access unemployment, find food banks, and it has been, probably unsurprisingly, the busiest we have ever been in our office over the past 12 weeks. So we have assisted in over 200 unemployment cases so far. And a note to all of the members, if you do have residents who reach out to you and are looking for assistance with unemployment, you can refer them to our website. We now have a form on the website that people can fill out directly that will allow us to start the process of advocating on their behalf. The UIA hired 26 additional people in addition to the 300 people they hired to handle unemployment. But those 26 people are dedicated to troubleshooting cases from legislators' offices. So we are happy to provide that service and do everything we can to make sure people have the resources they need. We have held many virtual town halls over the past few weeks. There's a small business town hall that I held with Representative Manoogian and Congressman Andy Levin, as well as representatives from the MEDC, the Small Business Development Company, and others. So that's available on our Facebook page if there are any small business owners. It was packed full of information and was really, really fantastic. And people were able to chime in live with questions from Facebook. We also held a youth town hall where we asked each of the school districts that I represent throughout the Senate district to nominate a high school representative. So it was 7 high school juniors and seniors, including Rochester Community Schools, with the Lieutenant Governor, myself, and Michigan Teacher of the Year, Kara Lockheed, also from Rochester Community Schools, which if you need a pick-me-up any day of the week, please watch that video. It is on our Facebook page as well. I was absolutely blown away by the thoughtfulness and questions from all of our high schoolers as they navigate this very strange time. I held a virtual town hall where I reviewed many of the national plans for reopening from Harvard, AEI, the Center for American Progress, CDC, FEMA, the White House, and more, and just opened up to a discussion on kind of the similarities and differences between all of those plans. I am one of the co-chairs of the bipartisan auto caucus in the legislature. So we've had about bi-weekly virtual town halls with the auto caucus and Mich Auto through the Detroit regional chambers with about 100 representatives from the auto industry, including suppliers and OEMs. And this coming Friday, I will be a part of the Mich Bio virtual town hall, which is the life sciences group in the legislature that, again, is a bipartisan bicameral group. We've also held virtual coffee hours nearly every single week on Facebook, where I've been available to answer questions from people. I post regular video updates. We've probably done about 25 so far. And just a couple of weeks ago, we held Zoom meetings and invited all of the district mayors and city managers, district police and fire chiefs, and all of the district chambers of commerce. And it was a really good conversation. So we're going to keep those meetings going. They're only about 30 minutes. I like to be cognizant of people's time. What I am working on in the legislature, now that we are starting to see some reopening and light at the end of the tunnel, thank goodness, I am now working on legislation to really solve for the mid and long term needs as we come out of the economic impact of this crisis. So I introduced a package of bills with Senator Irwin to allow cocktails to go. That's something that I've heard from many of our restaurants who have said that, you know, their recovery period is probably going to be 12 to 18 months. There are not going to be full restaurants probably for quite some time. And frankly, many of my constituents have said they really like dining at home and may want to continue to do so. So this is something that many other states have allowed. Michigan currently allows for beer and wine. But we know that in restaurants, about 30% of cash that comes in is from alcohol sales. So this is something that we've heard directly from restaurants would allow them to keep people on staff. So we think that's really important. And it's actually something that one of my police chiefs asked for as well. They know they can do it safely. We don't want to lose our downtown businesses. And then Senator Irwin's would allow local governments to designate special districts where you could have open containers. There's a similar bill that Rep. Weber introduced in the House. So again, trying to expand the use of outdoor space for our restaurants as we start to reopen. I was on a task force with restaurant owners from all around the state as we talked about reopening. And this is something that nearly every single one of them said they need, is more flexibility in utilizing outdoor space to allow for social distancing to keep not only their staff safe, but patrons safe, to rebuild that consumer confidence as well. I'm also working on a healthy workplace certification program, something similar to restaurant letter grades that you might see, where businesses who fulfill kind of all of the safety requirements related to COVID could get maybe a window placard, something they could display on their website to really reassure consumers that this business is operating with all of the best safety protocols to, again, encourage people to return to those places, because there's the hard reopening. That's when we open our doors. And then the soft reopening is rebuilding consumer confidence so that people will feel safe getting back out into our communities. I'm also working on a bill to allow grants for school districts who are pivoting to potentially a hybrid model of, you know, continuing to use some virtual learning with in-person, if hopefully we can start to reopen our schools in the fall. And this would hopefully allow our schools to access some more of those federal CARES Act dollars, which the way that the previous bill was crafted only allows the state to pull down those funds for new COVID-19 related costs. We cannot use it to backfill holes in our budget. So we know that we are looking at a $1 to $4 billion state budget shortfall. And that affects, you know, K-12 school funding. It is critically important we get our basics right. So hopefully this grant program would allow for them to pull down some more of that funding and earmark it to a new COVID-19 expense. And then in the Senate, so the Senate passed a bipartisan, it was 100% unanimous, $523.7 million COVID response funding bill that again pulls down funding from that federal CARES Act. And it includes things like hazard pay for direct care workers and nursing home workers, child care assistance, hiring that extra 300 UIA staff to assist in unemployment claims, additional PPE and testing. It also includes funding for the Hospitality Employee Fund to help restaurant workers who have been adversely impacted, and devices for Michigan students to support learn from home. I know that's not something that affects this district, as I've talked to all of our superintendents throughout the district who have done incredible work making sure all of our students have access to hotspots and Chromebooks, but is critical for the rest of the state. And as we kind of face this crisis and the tension really started building, you know, the longer this goes on, the more tension builds. This felt like a real breakthrough in the legislature, where this was the result of really, really fantastic negotiation between Senate Democrats and Senate Republicans, and the governor's office as well, who had submitted a letter requesting some of these things. So I hope it's a sign of things to come. Especially as we head into budget season. We are slated to see an omnibus budget bill hit the Senate floor tomorrow to start that process. So that is my update from the legislature. If you didn't see today, the MI Safe Start dashboard launched today, and I posted a link to this on my Facebook page and Twitter account, and we'll send out an email update, which is a live dashboard of all of the regions throughout the state where you can dig in by county and by region to see all of the data around COVID cases, testing we're doing, hospitalizations, and see in real time what phase each region is in. And then finally, over the weekend, so as we're starting to pivot to reopening, one of the things that I think about very frequently is how can we positively encourage behavior that's going to help us reopen safely, but also more quickly. So I launched a hashtag on social media over the weekend, hashtag #MaskUpMichigan, which has now been viewed more than 20,000 times and has 4,000 shares. From all around the state. And I was reposting all weekend pictures of people who were wearing masks, many of them homemade, many very creative, because it is something that is strange and potentially uncomfortable for some people. So I'm trying to build the idea that this is something that we can all do, that's very easy, that protects our neighbors, that will help us reopen faster. We are in direct control of our future here. So that's my update, and I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions for the Senator? Councilmember Keithley?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. And thank you, Senator McMorrow, for joining us here today and for that update. I did see the My Safe Start dashboard go through today, and I really appreciate that. I think it'll be a great resource for our residents. I'm wondering, I've been following the HEROES Act that was introduced in the House. I believe it's made it to the State Senate. Could you give us an update on that, and if you've seen or heard about that bill yet?
Sure. So that's federal legislation. So it passed through Congress and is on its way to the U.S. Senate. So unfortunately, I don't have any say in that. But I know Congresswoman Slotkin has been working on that. And one of the good things that I've heard, so my Senate district overlaps 3 congressional members, Alyssa Slotkin, Haley Stevens, and Andy Levin. I've had really, really good weekly conversations with all of them. And one of the things that we asked for, and I know many of our communities have asked for as well, is that the next federal package include both more flexibility for states to use that funding, so it's not so strictly earmarked to new COVID expenses, as well as funding for local municipalities. The way the CARES Act was written is it didn't allow for cities smaller than 500,000 in population to access those funds directly, which in the state of Michigan is only 1 city, and it's none of the ones that I represent. So I know that was really important. I know it's on its way to the U.S. Senate, and I've encouraged Senator Peters and Stabenow to support that.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Further questions? Ben Giovanelli, you'd like to ask a question? You got to unmute yourself.
Ben, you're on mute.
Ben, you're on mute.
How often does that happen in these meetings? Probably all the time, right?
So often. I'm on 6 of these calls a day at least, and you know.
Or my kids running through the backyard, or the dog barking. Wherever. Senator McMorrow, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Of course.
My name is Ben Giovanelli. I was on council for 12 years, but now I'm no longer an elected official, but I am the chairman of our Downtown Development Authority.
Fantastic.
And oddly enough, we're on the agenda later to talk about outdoor dining and accessing the outdoors. And your bill and Rep. Weber's combination, the Senate Bill 939 and House Bill 5781. The thing that sort of this really into this crescendo of everybody clearly wants to be outside, and we're going to deal with that later in our agenda, as I said. But the thing I found striking in this one is that it would allow restaurants and bars that serve food to also serve alcohol in adjacent commons areas shared by other establishments, and also offer curbside pickup. So in addition to the curbside pickup that you talked about, the adjacent commons area is something we're going to be getting at later. And that was really sort of, this just popped up on my feed literally 2 hours ago. So we've been working this issue literally every single week. We have a DDA and principal shopping district meeting. But I wanted to wonder if you could sort of expand on that and the thought behind the social district idea and whatnot.
Yeah,
I found it very intriguing.
Yeah, so the idea behind it is that it would give freedom and flexibility for local municipalities to, for example, shut down a street and turn that into a social district. So what we've heard from many restaurants is some have a parking lot, some do not. Some of our smaller family-owned restaurants are very narrow, and if they were to cut down to the 6 feet of space in their seating area, that would cut down their restaurant drastically. One of the things that we heard on the restaurant and bar reopening task force was that restaurants preferred the flexibility to think about safe social distancing, so the 6 feet between tables, rather than a capacity limit, because some restaurants allow very easily for expansion, some don't. But especially as we go into the warmer weather, being able to do something like close down a street and allow for tables to potentially be placed on the sidewalk and in the streets gets you beyond just the patio permit that many restaurants might have, and be able to open that up. So it would be, it's a little bit European in terms of kind of where you would be allowed to go. The bill that we have in our package in the Senate, I don't know if it's different than Rep. Weber's in the House, would require that the container that alcohol is being served in is clear and also branded. And it's actually something that the Royal Oak police chief, when I had a call a couple of weeks ago with all of our police chiefs, really highly recommended and asked for. One of the things that he said to me was, our job as police officers is to enforce the laws that are on the books. We don't want to have to go into our small family-owned restaurants, and shut them down for kind of expanding out further than they're allowed to be able to fit the social distancing. So if we were given clearer guidance to be able to designate a part of town that is maybe closed to cars for the summer, and you could actually open that up and restaurants could share that space, and it would be up to DDAs like yourself to decide, how that space is used. We really want to give that freedom and flexibility to determine that, okay, as we're coming out of this thing, let's really expand what space can be used, and make sure that our police officers too have more flexibility in not having to enforce things that they don't want to.
Yeah, for sure. So it's the old devil in the details thing, right? So what we've been talking about for several weeks is parklets, using parking spots and creating kind of like what Birmingham and Ann Arbor, the first two that sort of come to mind, but taking parking spots and building out decking and that type of thing.
Yeah.
But your bill took that and just put that on steroids. So I wanted to thank you for advancing that and drawing some clarity around it. The biggest problem I have, and we've had this discussion with our chiefs as well, is that dealing with the Michigan Liquor Control Commission and how that licensing works and all of that. Right. The part of the discussion we're going to get at later tonight is that we don't really have time to go through the normal process of how long it takes to get things through the system, so to speak. So we're trying to streamline, that our restaurants, to your point, are going to take a good 12 to 18 months to recover, and anything that we can do to get them through the summer, to help them out is number one priority for us. Just getting people outside in general, right?
Yeah.
But we're worried about that coordination between Liquor Control Commission. MDOT owns Main Street, so they've already gave indication that they're going to give us. In the past, they would never let us put parklets on Main Street, but now they're starting to say that they're going to allow it because of the things that are going on now. So I just think being mindful of the intercoordination of liquor control and MDOT and all these other pieces.
Absolutely.
That say, and so I get the sense that everybody is willing to try something new and to cut the red tape and to make it as streamlined as possible. And the fact that we've got legislation that has both parties and both houses, the House and the Senate, both trying to do the same thing, it gives me great hope that it will get done, hopefully quickly. There's no such thing as getting things done quickly in government, but I trust that, with you on the case, it should happen rather quickly. But time is of the essence, and that's kind of what we're getting at tonight. So we're trying to sort of cut all that red tape. But I just wanted to thank you for that piece of legislation in particular, and Rep. Weber as well. I think it's you guys get it, right? So it's not just Rochester, to your point, Royal Oak, everybody's doing the same thing we are. And later tonight when we talk about it, so we started talking about doing outside stuff, 2 months ago. Now all of a sudden everybody in the country has got it figured out. It's no longer our great idea. It's everybody's great idea, which is fantastic.
Which is okay.
But that's great. No, it's lose the battle and win the war. But my thought is that that's just further affirmation that we're doing the right thing. And then these little things that come out like your bill are just helping that cause. So I just wanted to thank you and get a little bit of clarity around that.
And just to touch on that a little bit, the Liquor Control Commission, we've had a representative in the task force calls that I had. So last week, I had 5 or 6 different restaurant and bar reopening task force meetings back to back all week. And they've been a part of that conversation, which is great. I mean, we are all working together, and when you're dealing with a State Department, they've taken some flexibility and kind of stretched what they're allowed to do within the bounds of the statute. So there are certain limits to what they can allow for, which is why we introduced these legislatively, because we would have to change the statute to give them a little bit more flexibility. But I think they're where we are in that we understand, restaurants are closing now and have been closing over the past few weeks. And the longer this goes on, the tighter the margins are for many of our independent restaurants. So it's definitely an all hands on deck process. And then another thing on the cocktails to go bill is we've expanded it, not just to restaurants that currently have the ability to say sell growlers to go, but to any restaurant that currently has an on-premises liquor license, which would expand that to anybody who's able to sell drinks, which I think, we'll see what happens in committee, but we wanted to make sure that we didn't have to add hurdles to people to get a certain license to be able to do this.
Sure.
So we'll see what happens, but I am cautiously optimistic to your point, given that it's bipartisan.
Yeah, that's awesome. Would it be helpful if we sent a letter of our support from the Downtown Development Authority, and
Absolutely.
Also perhaps City Council would want to do the same thing? I think anytime you can walk into, a battle with a lot of armament, letters coming from the DDAs all in support of this, I think would be helpful to your cause. So we're happy to do that.
Thank you very much.
We got a meeting tomorrow night, and I'll make sure that we get that out to you as soon as possible.
Great. Thank you so much.
Indeed. Thank you.
Anything further? City Clerk, you had your hand up?
Just to say thank you for the Secretary of State being able to send out all the applications for AVs to all of the voters. Allowing the clerks to process those on the front end rather than close to election is going to be very helpful. I know that clerks are clamoring for some legislation to change the date that we can start opening those. Although I'm small, it won't affect me much. However, just simply being able to open 60,000 envelopes rather than is time consuming. So for those bigger communities, that I would look for support for that as well. So
absolutely. Yeah. I work really, really closely with Tina Barton out of Rochester Hills, who, will call me with hour by hour breakdowns of how long it takes her staff to process on election days. She's been a tremendous resource for me. And we actually have on our agenda in the Senate tomorrow, Ruth Johnson's bill that would at least allow for the beginning of processing of envelopes. I know for many of our clerks that doesn't quite go far enough. But, as we're looking at the combination of what is shaping up to be a record election year on both sides of the aisle in terms of turnout, in addition to, we don't necessarily know what this pandemic will look like in a few months and how many people will vote absentee. I know in our last municipal election, some precincts had 90% who chose to vote absentee, and that was pre-COVID. So I hear you. And if there's any other thoughts you have on this, I have a meeting with the Secretary of State's office this coming Monday as well to start talking about some of these issues. But it is on my radar because it is hugely important to me that people trust in the election process and make sure they know that their vote's going to get processed the right way.
Yeah, and a big concern will be, I've already had a couple election workers already say they won't be working this fall. So we're going to have to see how that looks like.
Yeah, it's the challenge of how do we make sure that you have the resources you need for PPE protection, keep everybody who's working safe, especially knowing that most poll workers are 60 and above. So we want to make sure that anybody who is dedicating themselves to working the polls feels and is safe.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Bavacqua.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Senator McMorrow for probably one of our most thorough updates we've ever received. And I just want to show some appreciation for the hard work that you're putting in, especially during these times. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, thank you, Senator McMorrow. It's a pleasure to see you today. And I really appreciate this, the in-depth work that has been going on. I say behind the scenes. It's really been helpful, especially for all the decisions and things that we're going to be making here soon. Question though, regarding the Secretary of State. I'm in real estate, as you know, and we're seeing a huge issue with people not being able to get mortgages because their driver's license have expired, and they can't get, or their visas or anything, they can't get everything, their passports updated. How is that coming along?
Yeah, so that's a huge issue. So there was just a bill that passed the Senate that I believe is on its way to the State House that would effectively codify into law the governor's executive order to extend deadlines for those whose licenses need to be renewed. And then my colleague, Senator Jeremy Moss, introduced a piece of legislation that would be a more long-term solution. So saying anytime there is a state of emergency or something that requires Secretary of State branch offices to close, that the Secretary of State would have the ability, without waiting for the legislature, to be able to extend those deadlines. Now, I know that doesn't solve the issue of if you've got somebody applying for a mortgage and their license or their ID is expired, that's going to make that certainly more challenging, if not impossible, to get that paperwork to go through. So I'll bring that up with the Secretary of State's office on Monday. If there's a creative way for the state to, whether it's a temporary digital ID or something that they can bring with them once branch offices are open to be renewed, but so that it doesn't hold up things like processing mortgages, because we certainly don't want that to happen.
Right. Oh, and I thank you for that. I guess, and that's the hardest part right now, because that's all on the mortgage financing side of things, which is totally different, as well as just showing that ID. I know
I think Councilmember Peterson, you're breaking up.
Certified IDs that way. I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
No, we're back.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
You might want to restate your question.
All right, thank you. Well, I'm just a statement. It was regarding the title companies. They're handling all the closings and everything very well. Just the biggest issue has been on the financing side. So I appreciate you looking into that. I appreciate the great update today, and thank you for what you do.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll raise that with the banking associations as well to see if, because I serve on the Insurance and Banking Committee in the Senate. So whether it's an issue that we can solve via the Secretary of State's office or with legislation through that committee. Thanks for raising that with me. I'll check in with them and see if there's a creative solution.
Awesome. Thank you.
Anything further? All right, Senator McMorrow, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And we've got, just if I can plug it, a virtual coffee hour that we just scheduled for this Friday at 1 p.m. on my Facebook page. So come on in, share it with people, ask any questions. They've been really good kind of casual ways for us to dialogue with people about what's happening every week, which feels like 9 million things happen every week.
Yeah, it's true.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Okay. Next on to other public comment. Ben, anything else? You were on a roll.
No, I'm going to wait till later.
Okay.
You guys got a full one. I was surprised when I saw the agenda. I was like, holy moly, you're getting ambitious tonight. So get after it, and we'll stay here muted and jump in at.
Couldn't resist that one, you guys. Next is the approval of the minutes, consideration of the minutes of the regular meeting of May 11, 2020, and consideration of the special meeting of May 11, 2020.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Peterson.
Support.
Support by Councilmember Albrecht. Discussion. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Dixon,
Yes.
Bavacqua,
Yes.
Albrecht,
Yes.
Keithley,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Sage,
Yes.
Salvia.
Yes.
Thank you. Next on is approval of the consent agenda is amendment for G2G Cloud Solutions fee waiver and approval of the interlocal agreement with Oakland County Animal Shelter and Pet Adoption Center.
Moved.
Motion by Councilmember Peterson.
Support.
Support by Councilmember Sage, I think. Is that you, Councilmember Sage?
Yes.
All right, yeah. Discussion, Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Dixon,
Yes.
Bavacqua,
Yes.
Albrecht,
Yes.
Keithley,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Sage,
Yes.
Salvia.
Yes.
Thank you. There's no old business or table items tonight, no public hearings, so we're on to legislative deliberation. A is the 2020 installment of the PSD special assessment. City Manager Wing.
All right, before council is the DDA's really proposal to pay for this upcoming assessment for the principal shopping district.
Are you looking for a motion, City Manager?
Yep.
Yeah, I think we're looking for a motion. So Councilmember Albrecht, you'd like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the plan for the DDA to pay the PSD special assessment as outlined in the packet.
Support.
Very good. So motion by Councilmember Albrecht, support by Councilmember Peterson. Discussion. Councilmember Albrecht?
I just wanted to, when you read through the information that was presented and the amount of money that the DDA took out of their budget to support local business and just everything the city is doing, not just the DDA, the city government and everything else. We're going to hear about some more from the DDA and what the senator just mentioned. We really have to support our local businesses because this is a 12 to 18 month recovery. And I thought that was very progressive and forward thinking of the DDA a few weeks ago to come up with this. So I'm proudly making this motion.
Thank you. Councilmember Keithley.
Thank you. I would like to just reiterate Councilman Albrecht's comments. I asked Blaine to crunch some of the numbers, and he said that this will save our downtown businesses anywhere from $500 to $1,500, and the max of $10,000. And I think that's really substantial for businesses that can really be suffering during this time. So I really am grateful for the DDA to step up and do that.
Thank you. Councilmember Peterson.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I just want to add that I've never been one to vote for this in the past, but I am supporting this, and I do want to thank the DDA for everything they have been doing. The PSD, they have really come together to actually, in a way, just save our downtown. So I appreciate everything they've done, and it's just great. So thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Dixon,
Yes.
Bavacqua,
Yes.
Albrecht,
Yes.
Keithley,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Sage,
Yes.
Savia.
Yes.
Thank you. I also think we're doing to echo Councilmember Albrecht, we are trying to do everything we can to help our businesses. So anything we can do to help helps. So next is discussion regarding city council members serving on boards and commissions as citizen members. And this came up from discussion about council people serving as citizens on boards, and then when people get elected to boards, people who serve on boards getting off when they get elected to city council, because that came up because there were some potential issues. Some council people wanted to discuss this, so now this is on the agenda for discussion. So is there discussion? Mayor Pro Tem Bavacqua.
Yeah, this has been a little bit of a concern of mine in that, I think we've got a great community here with a lot of people that step up and join boards and commissions. And I don't think we have a shortage of help out there of good quality people with a lot to offer. And I just don't think it's great practice to have those positions filled by people who are on council, have opportunity to join many boards and commissions. Case in point, I think I'm on, 5 or 6. So to join as a citizen position on a board, I just don't think is necessary. So I would prefer that if you're on council, you shouldn't be filling a standard citizen position. Thanks.
Very good. Councilmember Salvia?
I think Councilmember Peterson was first.
Oh, Councilmember Peterson?
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Nancy. I just, I guess I have a concern though, because as being somebody who's been in the city for 12 years, watching these boards and commissions grow and change through time, I think that if you don't have the right people sitting there that have the experience in whatever forte they have that can be a part and make the boards and commissions better, as a citizen, I think that's like taking away our rights then, because we should be able to sit as a citizen member if the shoe fits. So I understand and appreciate Mayor Pro Tem Bavacqua's thoughts on that. I know it's been something that's been raised in the past by a lot of people. However, if they are qualified to, do the job and represent, which I think through the years we have seen that citizen members have done nothing but go above and beyond to represent the boards that they sit on. They've done an outstanding job, and I will just say right now, just as our DDA chair currently, Ben Giovanelli, being that a citizen member all these years, has helped change and shape and make things so much better, just because that's what he likes to do. So sorry, Ben, just wanted to have an example that I knew firsthand of for the past, 11, 12 years. That's something that we need to, not take away the city council members' rights of serving if no one else is there to serve and they actually fit the bill for being qualified. Thank you.
Councilmember Salvia.
Yeah, my thought was just really a statement that 2 points. One is that this isn't being brought up in reflection of any individuals, any specific cases, in the past or current. And also, I think it is important that I think we should prefer citizens to give them opportunities for these positions, because I think as a non-elected citizen, you do have a different perspective than you do as an elected official. I agree with Councilmember Peterson's points on people who serve on council can have skills and experiences, but I think the perspective that a true resident can bring without the, if you will, title of being elected is valuable on these committees.
Councilmember Albrecht.
Yes. Having served on the DDA, I wanted, once I became elected, to resign my position, which I didn't need to, but I felt it was the right thing to do going on council. But as I look at these nominations for council commissions and, to take away this avenue of a group of elected officials who might have a passion for a commission or a board, to eliminate that group from being considered for those boards and commissions, I don't think it's the right direction to go. I think as long as we manage the amount of people on the board, as we know, the DDA has the standing position of Mayor Bix, the standing mayor, to be on that board. And I think there would be some other boards in the future that one of us or one of our future council members would want to serve on because they're passionate about. I don't want to close that door or that avenue.
Thank you. Councilmember Sage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I guess I would offer a different perspective. My sole desire to serve on a board and commission was to learn more about the city, to determine whether I actually had any aspiration to run and be elected to city council. And it was invaluable. That experience was invaluable to me, but I did not feel compelled once elected that I needed to stay on those boards, understanding that I might have an opportunity to be selected as a liaison to those boards. So maybe I offer a different perspective in that I would support more citizens to have that opportunity to be exposed to the city, and then hope that they would also consider running for election.
Very good. Mayor Pro Tem Bavacqua.
Yeah, just a couple follow-up points based on the discussion. I think council members do have a very strong voice and can be involved in deliberative process without being on a board. They have the opportunity to serve as a liaison without being a voting member. In some cases, they have the opportunity to be a voting member on some boards. And if you push this out to its worst possibility, if you get a consolidation of power, you could have people putting 3 council members on a board, serving on council and making decisions on boards as citizen members, which I don't think there should be that opportunity for that to happen, in the way that we write these rules. So that's my concern.
Councilmember Keithley. You need to unmute yourself. There you go.
Got it. It's got to happen to everyone once, right? I would just say that I think having a variety of perspectives is really important. So if we can have a different voice in all of these various positions, I think it will give us a unique perspective, some fresh ideas, and get more people involved. And I think having more people involved in our city is never a bad thing. It just helps us be better. With that said, if we don't have the people to fill the positions, I would hate to limit it to say that people can't serve in multiple roles, because we need good people in these positions.
Good. Yeah, and just one of the points, Mayor Pro Tem Bavacqua.
Yeah, at the very least, then I would say there should be a limit on it.
There is.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, one thing I was thinking about was, a lot of times we have people from boards who run for office. So what happens if you had a couple people from the planning commission, let's say, get elected all of a sudden, and they didn't want to get off the board? Well, then all of a sudden you have, a quorum, or you have 3 people on the board. That probably seems like too many to me. So, I mean, that's something, something to think about, I think. Councilmember Peterson, you had a question? I'll get you, Ben.
Oh, yes.
Peterson, go ahead.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, but we still are all citizens, and I appreciate everyone's comments as well. We have, the way most of our boards and commissions are set up already, we always have 3 people there on most of those, even though one is a liaison. That person has just as much influence sitting there as the people who do the voting. So, I mean, I've questioned just having the liaison there as well, because we've actually started to add liaisons to different committees and things that we never had before in the past. And to me, those people now are the ones who are influencing other boards for in that capacity as well. So this is really hard when you have people who are actually, we're all citizens of this community. And as to Councilmember Sage's point as well, we sit on different things to see where our wheelhouse is, to see if we like serving in those capacities, to learn something new about the community, because all of us being as busy as we are, and all the boards and commissions I know I have sat on in the past, you don't have all these opportunities to know everything. And sometimes if you can go in as a citizen member, you can actually help, your own position that you are, because you're representing everyone. And for the longest time, we had a lot of a hard time having citizen members even apply for some of these. But I think even the bigger issue is if we're going to start limiting council members from being appointed to some of these, because they are appointed people to most of these, and citizen members, then why are we not addressing council members who have family members who actually sit on boards and commissions? Because that's almost as well as a conflict of interest, or it could be, because it all is in the matter of perception. So it's being perceived right now that, a council person sitting on these boards and commissions can have an undue influence. And then you have the same thing with any of them with having their family members sit on the boards and commissions. Thank you.
Ben Giovanelli.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm trying not to butt in, like I was, still part of the team, right? But this one, I felt like I had a little skin in this game, so I thought I'd just sort of offer some thoughts. So I think that really there's a couple of tools that help this already that are in existence. First of all, most of the appointments that we're talking about are mayoral in nature. So you're going to have to get through that layer. We did put in the ethics ordinance that addresses the much of what Councilperson Peterson just talked about a moment ago with respect to nepotism and that sort of thing. I would say that DDA, planning, and RAW, all three of those council appointments are voting members. So I think maybe the answer to the question that you guys are trying to get at is that perhaps, I don't know, this, you can probably turn this over to the city attorney, but getting to the situation where you've got the ability to direct via voting on those boards and commissions and have a quorum, right? So I don't suspect this would ever happen. And I used to hate when I was on council trying to solve problems that didn't exist. But in this particular case, I can see where there might be a potential there. So maybe the devil in the details there is coming up with some sort of prohibition against any board or commission having a quorum of voting members on city council. That may get you to where you want to go. But I will tell you that what Ann was just talking about, in my opinion, has been profoundly impactful on the inner workings and the relationship and how well we work together as a community between DDA, planning, council, historical, having all the liaisons, having everybody involved in our meetings, having all of this cross pollination, to steal a phrase from Marilyn Trent, really, I think has been very, very impactful and very positive. So I would hate to see that end. I understand the issue, and I happen to agree with it. I think if you get at the quorum issue, I think that'll solve your problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, maybe that's something city manager and I could talk about and see if there's something we can bring forward for further discussion. City manager, you think you have a pretty good idea where people are coming from?
Yep, I'm happy to talk with you and probably our city attorney too to kind of draft something up.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Bavacqua.
Yeah, and just for the record, I just want to make sure it's known that I don't have any issue with cross-pollination and liaisons and council members sitting on boards and commissions. I think that's all great. It's just my concern is taking up standard citizen positions with council members.
Okay. Next is on to a proclamation declaring June 5th, 2020 as National Gun Violence Awareness Day. City Clerk, you were going to bring Jane on?
Yes, Your Honor. Jane did notify me that we have a couple of public comments that were filtered through her, so she will offer what those are.
Jane, welcome.
Yes, Mayor. We received 2 public comments via email, one in support, one in opposition.
And who were the people? Do you have those with you? No.
Yes, so we received one from a resident, James Risco, and then the other one was from another resident. Let me pull up her name. Anna Risai, I believe is how you pronounce it.
Thank you. Discussion, council?
Just curious, what were the comments regarding support, and then obviously the other comments, why they are opposed? Can we see the documents?
Jane?
I can share my screen and you guys can see them unless you would prefer me to read them into the record. So
are they long?
They're a couple of sentences. I wouldn't say they're extreme.
All right. Why don't you just read them real quickly?
So the one in support came from Anna Rasai at 918 Loggers Circle. She says, please vote yes on the proclamation to designate June 5th as Gun Violence Awareness Day. The purpose of this day is to recognize those who have lost their lives to gun violence and commit to reducing gun violence. In Oakland County, the following communities have adopted proclamations to designate June 5th as Gun Violence Awareness Day. These communities are Beverly Hills, Bloomfield Township, Rochester Hills, Clawson, Farmington Hills, Ferndale, Franklin, Hazel Park, Huntington Woods, Lathrop Village, Madison Heights, Pleasant Ridge, Royal Oaks, Southfield, and West Bloomfield. please add the city of Rochester to this list. And then the other comment from James Risco says, I wish to strongly object to this for the following reason. One, it marginalizes those people who met with violence by means other than a firearm. In effect, it makes them second-class victims. Two, a firearm is an inanimate object. To blame a gun for violence would be like blaming an axe for deforestation, a pencil for failing a test, a camera for child pornography, or a putter for missing the cup. If you wish to have Violence Awareness Day in the hopes of one day ending all violence, that would be fine, if somewhat naive, but to single out one object for all of mankind's ill is not acceptable.
And there sums up the gun issue, I guess. I don't know. Councilmember Albrecht.
When this was a few weeks ago, Councilmember Keekly had mentioned in her miscellaneous that one of our residents had asked us to consider this. I think all of us on council received an email from this. I didn't pull it up as part of this, but my understanding of this is something that is going on nationwide. You wear orange like the hunter's orange. I think this is the 5th or 6th consecutive year. I don't think this is a discussion on owning or the Second Amendment. This is more about gun violence awareness. So I would like to make a motion that we have a proclamation declaring June 5th, 2020 as National Gun Violence Awareness Day.
So motion by Councilmember Albrecht. Support by Councilmember Sage?
No, Keithley.
Keithley, I'm sorry. Or me. Councilmember Keithley. Councilmember Keithley, you had a comment.
Yes, I'd just like to say that a resident did reach out to us asking that we consider this issue. I think that, as we just stated in our last conversation, the more people that get involved in government, the more perspectives we'll have and the better off we'll be. Reading the proclamation, it seems like very bare bones, common sense acknowledgement that people have lost their lives in gun violence, and this is asking that we recognize that. It seemed pretty reasonable to me, and I like to hear our residents when they come to us with issues that are important to them, and I feel like we're doing that by adopting this proclamation. And to echo Councilman Albrecht's point, this is happening across the nation. Communities are adopting it, just like Rochester Hills and others. So I think that it seems like a very simple thing we can do to show our that we're not for gun violence.
Further comments? Councilmember Peterson.
All right, thank you. I have, when I first read this in the packet, I was concerned about it, and I appreciate everyone's comments. I appreciate that this has been going on for 6 years, but the way things have been going, I do find it very stereotypical, though, to just have it just as for gun violence, because it's kind of sets the wrong tone that we are only having violence awareness for anything that has to do with the gun. Secondly, I don't like that the orange is used from a family of hunters. I think it's kind of, it's not violence when they're wearing that out there to actually hunt, and it's to protect them. I understand what they wrote in their proclamation regarding this, but I do have a hard time with the way things are going to actually just single out just guns on this topic today. Thank you.
Further discussion? Attorney Jeff, did you have something to?
Nope, just getting ready for the next one.
Okay. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Dixon?
Yes.
Bavacqua?
Yes.
Albrecht?
Yes.
Keithley?
Yes.
Peterson?
I have to abstain.
You can't abstain.
You have to vote yes or no.
You have to, yes or no.
Say no then.
Okay.
And Sage?
Yes.
And Salvia?
Yes.
Thank you. Next is a consideration of a resolution to extend the landmark tree removal moratorium. City Manager Wing?
Actually, we had both Nick and our city attorney working on this with the committee. So I would rather have the people that have been in the meeting. So Jeff, if you maybe want to take the lead on this, and I know Nick as our forester might have some comments to say as well.
Attorney Jeff.
Yes, thank you. This is a simple request at this time. That the current landmark tree moratorium, removal moratorium, was put into place on March 9 and had a 90-day period of time. That 90 days is expiring June 7. And so the tree subcommittee has met several times by way of Zoom and is making good progress. We completed the initial review of the entire tree ordinance, and just looking at the timing of when the tree subcommittee can bring forth an ordinance amendment for city council to look at, approve or not, and to get it processed according to the ordinances, that would be beyond the June 7 date. So the request is to extend the moratorium for a period of 45 days, which would move it to July 15. And we believe that based on the timing requirements, that the ordinance, an ordinance amendment should be brought to City Council at some point at one of the June meetings, and then so that would be the entire extent of the resolution. That's the purpose.
Okay, Councilmember Albrecht and then Councilmember Salvia.
I just wanted to state both City Attorney Kroc and Nick Banda have done a great job of sort of guiding the tree committee through this. We have gone line by line, page by page through all 21 pages of the ordinance. And this is, again, just the resolution to extend the landmark tree removal moratorium, because we will be ready to present not only our recommendation as the tree committee on this ordinance, but other things that we are looking for the future of Rochester as a tree city, and how we spend money from the tree fund and other things. So we've been meeting. I think we've met 4 times already. We're making a lot of progress, and I would make a motion to extend the landmark tree removal moratorium for 45 days as indicated.
I can support the motion. Discussion or question on the motion for administration. Have we had any requests to remove landmark trees in the past 90 days?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Where's the mayor?
I was gonna say, I think the mayor may have just jumped off.
We lost the mayor.
Lost the mayor. In the absence of the mayor, I don't know, Dean.
Pro Tem, that would be
City Clerk, roll, please.
Dixon is MIA. We have Bavacqua,
Yes.
Albrecht,
Yes.
Heathley,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yeah.
Sage,
Yes.
Salvia.
Yes.
Dean, you were born for this moment.
I didn't think it would happen like this. Okay, so next item on the agenda, we are at reports and regular business. Discussion and request for approval to purchase new audio and video equipment and materials.
All right, I see the mayor coming on. Dean, do you just want me to wait to see?
No, run, no.
No? Okay.
Dean's got this. Let's go.
Sorry about that.
Dean took over.
You're good.
We got on to the next piece of business. You missed your vote.
All right. It was funny. Everybody else froze and I was talking just fine. All right. So where are we? Sorry about that.
Yeah, so Dean just introduced that the next item is the request for the purchase of new audio and video equipment and materials. And if you're okay, I would be happy to, since I wrote this memo and request, I'm happy to talk on it.
That's fine.
Okay. I don't know if the mayor froze again.
I think he's frozen again.
Okay.
Dean, get ready.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so let me give a little bit of the background and the history. So back in 2017, I brought before council that our audio and visual equipment, so basically the speakers in the council chambers, as well as the video equipment, needed an emergency a fix. We found out at that point a lot of the equipment is analog and was brought to the city in the 85, 86, and the newest stuff was in 89. So there's not really replacement parts. It's more salvaged components from other systems. There was we were able to fix it and move forward, but that council asked for this item to be added on to future goals and objectives. It was discussed in 2018. The overall price tag was just under 100,000, and so at that time, council decided over the next couple years we would basically buy components of it, and then have the final purchase of the last component in that last year. We have gone through 2 years of purchasing. With this upcoming budget is normally when we would have had the final request for the largest cost of the equipment, which is a TriCaster, which allows us to broadcast out to our website, to the YouTube channel, to our current two providers, WOW and Comcast. The analog system only can handle that. However, the digital system that we're looking at would also have 2 additional ports, so we could add AT&T and then possibly something else in the future. As we're moving forward with knocking out the back walls in our council chambers to add more space, again, we originally looked at a cost of around 30 to 35,000, but due to our not having planning commission, city council, and other meetings in there, our public works staff and our vendors are able to do the work not in a truncated schedule between meetings, and we're able to get the cost less than 15,000. I'll have a final number here shortly. However, not wanting to move the analog equipment from the back room to its new location, and then have to eventually replace it within a couple months, or potentially have it fail and then not have a system that would allow us to broadcast just like our meeting now tonight. It makes sense in talking with CMNtv, who is our broadcasting partner, to actually purchase the new technology, have it installed in that room, and then cut over from the old system to the new system. The main component of the price is the TriCaster, which is in the council packet starting on page 66. I want to say that TriCaster is the largest expense, which is just under $20,000. This will also replace our the microphones that are at the podium and the dais, which we've again had some issues with, both getting feedback during our council meetings, but as well as having it broadcasted, because again, it being analog instead of digital. So happy to answer questions on this particular item.
Council member Albrecht.
Yeah, I'm for this, Blaine. I just in the second paragraph it said using CMNtv, they priced out and obtained quotes on the remaining piece of video equipment as well as priced the replacement. Did we see 3 quotes so that we know that this is the right quote? I'm sure it's the right equipment, but that this was the best quote of 3. I know we try to get multiple quotes on anything when we're spending money, especially at this amount.
They do get multiple quotes and give us the lowest. And last time when we looked at this equipment, just kind of as a precaution, we priced out things, and their quotes were always the lowest when they were getting their quotes. So sometimes they're able to get more than 3. Sometimes it's like the TriCaster, it's the only piece of equipment, so they go right to the source.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. City Manager, so will AT&T be on with this one? Is this enough to get them to be able to televise for us?
It will allow us to do it, and I've had communications with AT&T, and they told me once we have this piece of equipment there, they would work with us to get AT&T on.
Did they give any time frame of how long it would take?
They said since this one's digital, it should be fairly quick, but they
Okay.
did not give a time frame.
Councilmember Sage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as a follow-up to Councilmember Peterson's question, how about the timing of actually installing it? Not the timing that AT&T can get it broadcast, but how about actual installation and up and running?
Yep. So CMN, along with their provider, I want to say it's Advanced
Lighting and sound.
Lighting and Sound. They basically gave me a 5 to 7 day window to get the equipment, and then they would work after we've ripped up the floors so that they could actually get the wiring for the microphones, along with the wiring that we already have in the ceiling and the fiber to be able to broadcast out. So 5 to 7 days. So we would be able to have our first meeting in July with the new equipment and the better cameras and audio.
Very good. Thank you.
Good. Further.
Just one other, Mayor. City Manager, are we going to be moving the diocese over to the side or just keeping it in the center?
Comments?
Yeah, the dais is actually locked in. There's hard piping for the electrical components, so we won't be moving the dais. What I will be moving is the podium so that any speaker would actually be able to see the full dais as well as about, I would say, 90% of the audience. So they have a much broader view.
No, I apologize. I meant the podium being moved.
The podium, yes.
I've heard a lot of complaints from our residents that it's too hard to see and everything. So, all right, thank you.
Yep, the podium would be moved to the right side nearest the clerk, and then the person speaking would be able to see the projected image as well as full council at the dais, as well as 90% of the audience. So they really won't have to look to their back.
Good.
Yeah, and I'd just like to make the comment, I don't know when we're going to be sitting up on the dais anytime soon. We're looking at other social distancing. I mean, even if we have the meetings back at City Hall, we might have to have a different format where we're not all, so that's something that city administration is looking at. Do we have a motion out there?
Make a motion to approve the purchase of the new audio and video equipment and materials.
Motion by Councilmember Peterson, support by Mayor Pro Tem Babakwa. Further discussion? Madam Clerk, the roll, please. Get it.
Vixen,
I thought I was going out again there for a second.
Vixen. Oh, he did. Babakwa?
Spoke too soon.
Panicking.
Stuart, was that you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And Babakwa?
Yes.
Albrecht?
Yes.
Keithley?
Yes.
Peterson?
Yes.
Sage?
Yes.
Salvia?
Yes.
Very good.
Like the power's going out on Terry Street again, just saying.
Yep.
Call DTE.
All right. Yeah, Dean, I don't know if you want to move on to the next item or.
Yeah, next item on the agenda, item B, extension of water penalty rate suspension.
All right. I'm happy to initially talk on this, and Marcy's also on the call as well. But we have 3 cycles when we do our water billing, and due to the COVID event, with the previous cycles 2 and 3, we've basically waived or the penalty component. And I had Marcy write up a short blurb stating to date how much money and then what's the projected that the city would potentially lose with not calculating out those penalties. But since we've done both cycles 2 and 3, this would be the 3rd cycle, which would be 1. Staff is recommending that we again waive the late penalties for water and sewer.
I'd like to make a motion to the extension of the water penalty rate suspension.
Support.
Motion by Peterson and support by Sage. Discussion.
Discussion.
Councilmember Salvia.
Okay, so question for administration, would this cover, if we have all three of these cycles, does this mean that all the water bills, water and sewer bills for the COVID-19 period would have this grace period? Have we covered them all?
This will complete all three.
Okay, and then the extension to June 1st, is that consistent with the time period, the 2 weeks that we gave to cycles 2 and 3?
Yes.
Okay, it does say that. I got it. Okay, I'm good.
Mr. Mayor, we're in discussion.
Thank you.
A motion and support.
So if I go out again, Mayor Pro Tem, thank you for helping me out. Assuming. Where are we?
Discussion. Any further questions or comments?
This is on the extending for the third cycle, the water and rate.
Right. I'm in complete support of that. So, Madam Clerk, the roll.
Vixen.
Yes.
Bavacqua.
Yes.
Albrecht.
Yes.
Keithley.
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
Sage.
Yes.
Salvia.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Next is discussion of outdoor dining and other efforts of the DDA. So, Mr. City Manager, why don't you give us an introduction?
Sure. The DDA board, and it's in council's packet on page 70, drafted up 2 items, and tonight I'm assuming that's why Ben's joining us, is going to be kind of getting a little bit more details into both the parklets and the outdoor dining component, as council read, there's basically an expedited request, which, if council would like to, would need to be done, by resolution or ordinance. The resolution would be the quickest way.
Okay, Ben or Christy, whichever wants to go. Christy?
Oh,
Ben?
I'm saying
Ben, if you're talking, you're going to have to unmute.
I know.
Right.
I was trying to find the button. I use WebEx at work, and everything's backwards and different on this one, so it takes me a minute. No, thank you for letting us come onto the agenda so quickly this evening, Mr. Mayor. We appreciate it. Just sort of an update. So the mayor, of course, is on DDA, as is Councilperson Peterson, and then Councilperson Keithley also has attended our last meeting and as the liaison to the PSD. So we're all kind of, everybody's marginally aware of what's going on, but just as a quick update for the entire council, we have been meeting regularly at 7 p.m., a joint meeting of the DDA and PSD to try and keep momentum going. I always affectionately refer to it as when the stone is rolled away from the cave, right? What are we going to do? So we've been working on that with great vigor, and the last meeting was really impactful. Christy and the team presented an idea regarding parklets, and as I told Senator McMorrow, it was just sort of serendipitous that all of a sudden the stuff that we've been talking about for the last month or so, month and a half, we see all these other communities starting to do it, and then piece by piece, the Liquor Control Commission and MDOT, people are starting to step up and understand that the way that we used to do business, or how we're used to doing business in government, can't happen now because it's going to take too long to be impactful to the businesses. So the discussion point that we had last Wednesday, I thought was probably one of our better meetings that we've had to date. Chief Schettenhelm and Nick were deeply involved in it, and I appreciate their takes and input, and trying to get at, offering spaces up. How do we deal with liquor issues, all of that. And then, by the grace of God, this House and Senate bill with Rep. Weber and Senator McMorrow, that just tells me that there's a building crescendo in Lansing of bipartisan support, and people just really ready to rip off all the government layers of bureaucracy to get this stuff done quick. So long way of saying that what we wanted to get in front of council as quickly as possible because of time being of the essence. There are a whole host of things related to outdoor dining and the parklet issue, a lot of which, and this is really being it's like we're rewiring a 747 at 40,000 feet, right? And we're getting instructions called up to, from the tower every 5 minutes. So we're getting more and more involvement, as I said, from these other governmental bodies, telling us how we could do things. But as we do one, as Chief Shettenhelm said, all right, you guys can do that, but it causes these 10 other problems. So what we're trying to do is to figure out how we can, I hate to use the pun, but flatten the curve in terms of the government bureaucracy to get things done quick. And that would be for council to decide with respect to parklets and outdoor dining. And I think everybody's familiar with the parklet and using parking spaces and building decks. We've sort of talked about them before and that thing. But there's a whole handful of ADA and liquors. I mean, there's a whole host of things that typically we'd have to go before planning commission and then go. This is the business owner, go before planning commission, then go before council and get approval. It would take months to get this done. So the thought was to come up with sort of a baseline of things that need to happen in order for, just like the sign ordinance, for Nick or the administration to approve these things, as long as the criteria are met that the administration has. And this is, council would sort of provide this fast track authority, if you will, for businesses to take advantage of outdoor dining and renting parking spots, if you will, using the parklet idea. And then also us doing our own parklets as the DDA. I think Christy had told us probably last time we talked, they're all starting to run together, but it was either at the council meeting or it was at DDA, but MDOT forever and ever was like, no, you can't do anything on Main Street. Now, all of a sudden, they're becoming very, 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 very amenative to having us do that. Of course, addressing the safety concerns that Chief Shettenhelm and Chief Cieslik brought up, and Nick. So I guess long story long is we're looking at council to sort of approve a baseline of criteria that if these things are met, it's okay to go ahead and rent, if you will, or create these outdoor dining spots for restaurants to take over, parking spots and increase their outdoor footprint. But now with this new legislation that I suspect is going to pass pretty quickly because of the bipartisan support, that opens up a whole different situation with respect to, I don't know if council, and I don't want to mess up the whole thing, but I mean, the potential now, as Senator McMorrow said, there's the potential to close down a street for the summer and have that be sort of an outdoor cafe, just picture being, in France or in Italy. I mean, this is very commonplace in Europe, as she said. So to me, it's super exciting. And I think to a person, we all know that everybody's going to want to be outside. So everything that we can do to do that. And so the main agenda item here is to get at a list of those things that need to be approved, that we can have fast track authority on and have administration say, okay, if you've met all this criteria, you get approval for, outdoor dining or that expansion of that. So that'll be the main thing. And then secondarily, I guess, because this legislation is just going through the state, through state government right now, if it goes quick, we're going to want to react quick to it. So hopefully, I mean, I don't know, Dr. Becker used to say government moves at a glacier's pace, and it's very true. But to the extent that gets approved, we would probably ask either it to be on the next council meeting, or to have you guys. I mean, everybody's welcome to come hang out with us on Wednesdays at 7:00 if you're, it's just a Zoom meeting like this. But this is where the DDA and the PSD are trying to come up with these creative ideas to sort of help. But the main focus here is we're dealing with a lot of red tape and bureaucracy that has been just the way we do things, that simply, if normal course were to take restaurants to apply for these things, they'd have to go before planning and they'd have to go before council, and it would take months. So long story long, like I said, we're just looking for some guidance from the administration and council to provide us a fast track authority. So if certain criteria are met, that restaurants and outdoor people can utilize these outdoor spots. And I realize it's a very complex issue, And, GDA is committed to do everything we can to try and be as, helpful in knocking down the walls, as it were, and coming up with solutions for our businesses, because I'm aware that we have more than just restaurants in town, but they have been most impacted by this. So we're trying to be as impactful for everybody. The parklet idea and the social, I don't know if everybody's super excited about people, walking through town with cocktails, but I think it's awesome, by the way, but I'm just saying. But that said, that's going to take a whole different mindset, so I don't know. There's a lot to unpack there, and I apologize for it. But the main thing we're looking at right now is just getting at the getting rid of the bureaucracy and really streamlining the process to get these things going.
Thank you. Christy, do you want to say something before we get into our discussion?
Yeah, I just wanted to, if this helps the council, to summarize a little bit for the actions we're looking for tonight. So obviously, number one, we're looking for the ability to expand outdoor dining to use public space, including specifically parking spaces. We're looking for the inclusion of parklet use in the outdoor dining ordinance, because parklets currently are not allowed with any city ordinance that we could find. And then lastly, exactly what Ben was just talking about, a streamlined process where it would take administrative approval and council approval, and skipping some of the other steps, but not skipping any of the guidelines, to get these things done in an expedited way. So I just wanted to simplify that really quick.
Thank you. Councilmember Salvia.
Certainly, thank you. So number one, I really support doing whatever we can to cut the red tape and get this done. I think one action that council should take tonight is to authorize administration to send a letter supporting both. Senator McMorrow said it was Cocktails to Go was the name of the bill, and I don't know the number on the House legislation. Sorry,
Senate. Real quick, Senate Bill 939 is the Senator McMorrow's bill, and Rep. Weber's is House Bill 5781.
Great, thank you. So I think we should support both of those. I have had conversation with residents, some that were not in support of this, but after we talked about it, they said, oh, I see your point. This is, as long as we have police enforcement around it, it's no different than monitoring alcohol that is served inside of an establishment. And, I've certainly traveled, and we've been to plenty of places that allow this. And I think it will be really helpful to our businesses. The concern that I have, I support, expanding outside dining, using parklets. What I've seen in the past did not have anything on Main Street. I don't see how we could use the parking spaces on Main Street safely. I can't support that unless there's something I'm really missing there that Chief thinks that could be a safe option.
Mayor Pro Tem Bevacqua.
Yeah, a couple things. First of all, I think Christy and Ben can attest that as soon as I started hearing rumors of these things being considered around the country, I wanted to make sure that they were already on top of it, which they were, because I think it's a great idea and a way to try to safely allow these businesses to ramp up again and take advantage as much as possible of the opportunities given the situation. So I think that's great. I'm with Councilmember Salvia as well, and kind of not really understanding how it would happen on Main Street. I have some concerns about the safety of the folks that take advantage of it and our residents. I understand the concept, but that liability beyond that is a concern. So just curious as to how those things are going to be addressed. Another kind of thought I had was this would take a lot of police presence that's not necessarily needed down there, either in the past or currently. From my perspective, if you've got a lot of outdoor activity that's going on that needs to be monitored, that's new, that's different. In the past, that activity was taking place inside bars, kind of self-monitored. Is there any concern of that from the chief's perspective? Are we going to see increased costs?
Chief, would you like to weigh in on both Mayor Pro Tem Bevacqua and Councilmember Salvia's questions? Chief?
Sure. With regard to Main Street use, obviously it's an area of concern, but I believe if they're properly constructed, that's one of the reasons that we went with recommending an elevated platform. The idea that we have concrete planters that we could use on either end of the platform to help as a safety device to prevent traffic. We have proper type of railings and things of that nature. I will tell you from my past experience of working in Birmingham, when those went in down there, I was not really a fan of them. I really thought that there would be problems. I thought there would be accidents. I thought there would be behavior issues. None of that has come to pass, and since that time, there's only more of them that have come down there. So, based on that experience, while I understand the apprehension, and it was an apprehension that I had, none of those issues did come to pass, and they seem to be working well down there, and I believe they could work well here with good cooperation from our restaurants, as well as making sure that we do our homework in the beginning and they're properly designed and set up when they go in.
Thank you, Chief. Councilmember Peterson and Councilmember Sage.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Yes, and thanks, many thanks to the DDA for all the planning ahead and being a liaison. I think this is great. To me, this is kind of no different than just the Kris Kringle market where there's alcohol being served and everyone hanging out in that area. I think that's kind of cool. To be able to do this a little more often than not. But the biggest reason I'm supporting this as well is because after hearing about even Senator McMorrow talking about how these smaller restaurants cannot accommodate the 6-foot ruling and still stay in business. And we've had the same comments at the DDA and PSD meetings. I think it's the only way to be able to keep our businesses moving forward and not losing any businesses, because we really can't. We're a nice downtown, but we're a small downtown, and we can't afford to lose any businesses. And I'd hate to see all their hard work in that go, to lose them because of all the hard work that they've put into it. So keeping that in mind, that's the biggest reason for being able to have all these different options out there. And also I want to just quickly thank DDA and PSD for working diligently and meeting as much as they do. Everyone has a huge stake in this and has put forth all their efforts to make our downtown continue flourishing during this and get us open safely quickly. Thank you.
Councilmember Sage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Ben and Christy, for this opportunity, this proposal. It sounds very exciting. So, reading it, I can read the word parklet. I have no idea what that means. Are there any drawings that we might be able to refer to at some point? And also, I think we've clarified, this is in the road, correct? This is in the road. So my concern, and I'm glad we heard from Chief Schettenhelm that there were concerns in Birmingham at the time, and those were somewhat alleviated. So how do you alleviate the liability to the city? So in an unfortunate incident, a diner is injured. How do we eliminate that if we go ahead and approve this to where the first person someone's going to sue is us? So I guess, and my point being, it's in the road. So I'm struggling with that part. And then the other part I'm struggling with is we expand this outdoor dining area, right? So we then literally compress the foot traffic area, which eliminates social distancing opportunity on the sidewalk. Then we also add the complication of the waiter or waitress coming from the establishment to the outdoor dining area and basically playing Frogger, if you will, across the sidewalk. So I'm hopeful that the DDA is looking at things like that, because those are just initial questions I have. But the liability thing is definitely the one that I would love to hear.
City attorney or city manager, do you want to weigh in on the liability issue? Because I think that's probably everybody's thinking about that.
Jeff, do you know from Birmingham how they handled it?
Well, I don't think in Birmingham they actually had city-run platforms. I think it was all private restaurants that did that. Now, what they would do is they, like, for instance, Dick O'Dowd's, we'll use that as they were one of the pioneers. And what they did, it wasn't on the street, but it was in the parking lots, which isn't that different than a street. So I'm not trying to draw a distinction, but you know, in there, I don't think that I know there was indemnification provisions. I know that there was, you know, so it was really the businesses that took on the risk. Obviously, the city, to Mr. Sage's point, the city would get sued for sure, because everyone would sue the city because it's the deep pocket, right? But I think that I don't think they ever ran into a liability issue. You know, there's governmental immunity. I can spew off the governmental immunity exceptions, and I don't think, you know, a gross negligence standard would be one of those. You know, that would be a hard standard to meet for a potential plaintiff. Also, you know, they're talking about the highway exception, which is probably between the gross negligence and the highway exception. Those would be the two areas that we would be most concerned with. You know, I would say that any agreement with a restaurant to do this, it would, you know, we would beef up the agreement. You know, we do currently now have a license agreement with anybody who uses outdoor dining on city sidewalk, because it's really, you know, you got city sidewalk, and now they're talking about expanding it into parking spaces. So right now we have license agreements that businesses use, and it has that indemnification provision in there. So we can put in as much as we can, but that's not going to, you know, stop someone from suing the city. So I guess that's my input.
Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but is that in the current ordinance with outdoor dining that they're required to have insurance that names the city as additional insured?
Yeah, I don't recall if it's specifically in the ordinance as much as it's in the license agreement that anybody using city property has to enter into.
So from a liability standpoint, I mean, we already assume that liability with other outdoor dining. It's also on city and MDOT property currently.
That's right.
Ben Giovanelli.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So a couple thoughts. The first thing that occurred to me is that if a business wanted to engage and take over, let's say it's a 2-spot parklet, and if you want, I can show you some pictures of what they look like. My thought was the city would lease those spots to the restaurant for $1. And then for that exchange, they would have to have indemnification language, like the city attorney says, proof of insurance, that sort of thing, to try and push as much of that liability onto the business owners and off of us as possible. As the city attorney said, I mean, you know, $150, you know, get you a lawsuit anywhere. It's just how successful it's going to be. So, you know, he knows, you know, the areas. The biggest thing that I'm thinking of is that we're talking about doing this for restaurants, but we're also talking about doing this as a community. And I want, if you don't mind, I have a picture, if I can share my screen. I think I'm allowed to. I promise it won't be inappropriate.
I don't know if you can. I think you have to be the meeting host, but I don't know.
It says share screen, so.
Well, yes, go ahead, Ben.
And if you need any more, I just pulled up some parklets, including the one that Bob Bloomingdale's pricing out for us.
Oh, good. Okay. So yeah, so I want to get that. So this was an article that, I mean, we've just had tons of this. This came from Dallas Eater. Chrissy had sent this along to us. I think it was last week, but this is the concept that we're talking about here. And I'll see if I can make that a little bit bigger so you can get a feel for what it is. So this would be something that the city would do, and we would put them out there for people just to sit outside and chill, providing outdoor spaces to do. So that if you look at it, it looks like it's about 2 parking spots. This would be one that the DDA would build and just, you know, set out, and people could come and eat ice cream and sit down, and we would, you know, obviously mask it up for social distancing and that sort of thing. But these things literally can take any shape or form. They're all the same basic, it's just like a backyard deck is the platform. And then from there, it's built up with various things. So you can see that this one's on, on a main street. It's raised, to the chief's point earlier. There is a whole host of them that come in just multiple configurations. But the main thing that I sort of wanted, and this is, if you just Google parklets, I mean, this is literally everything that I just popped up. They have, they can get as fancy or as non-fancy as you want, right? But the idea is that you're just taking a deck, like a backyard deck, and putting it in the street. Now, I will say that Christy had, when she spoke to the people at MDOT, and Christy, you can chime in about your contact at MDOT, said that they were amenable to it, they were open to it, but safety would have to be addressed and speed limits would have to be 25 or less, which is already on Main Street. So we've already met the gating criteria. I think that once you see a fair number of these in on the streets, whether it's Main or the side streets, it's going to bring a level of aesthetics, to it. I think that, the enforcement issues, that does not escape me. I understand that will be an issue. And perhaps there's a way we can partner in making sure that we've got adequate coverage in town. And that could be, further something the DEA can participate in. I'm open to have that discussion and present that to the board. But so this is just, I want you to get a feel for it. So we're not just talking about the ones that the restaurants are doing. We want them to have that. We want to create that ability. But we're also going to create a handful of these that are it's just city or DDA property that's just there for people to come and enjoy without, it being air quote owned by a restaurant or something along those lines. So, but once again, it's the same basic format. It's basically an outdoor deck that happens to be 2 parking spots wide, and it's going to have, Christy we were teasing about having them, sponsored and having, people do all kinds of fun stuff. I mean, the whole host of things that we could do with them is just, but it's getting past that concept of saying, okay, council is good with it in theory. Council is good with it for us to sort of move forward and create them. Bob, as Christy had said, Bob Bloomingdale is putting together a budget for us. He's going to build one. I think at cost we talked about was our last thing, to sort of get a feel for it, so we can have a demo one set up there for you. But we would put a handful of them around. And also further to this discussion it's not just the parklets on parking streets. We're also talking about other areas in the city that are city property that could be used, alleys and behind the parking decks and different places. But it's getting, that administrative part sort of nailed down quick-ish.
Councilmember Salvia.
Yeah, so just a key point here, the whole reason why we're looking at this is we're trying to keep people safe, right? We want them to be able to come and eat, but we want to keep them safe while they're eating and enjoying our downtown. So I think with that in mind, we really need to focus on using our alleys and the spaces behind. Seeing some of the pictures and seeing some comments from Chief, I'm warming up to the idea of some of these parklets on Main Street, but again, safety has to be the priority number one.
Councilmember Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. So question, is there something that we could do in the future to repurpose some of the gardens that we have set up and fenced in on Main Street already, to turn them and convert them into little parklets with seating in them? I mean, there's a lot of space in those. And we could almost do that. Just a thought.
Mayor Pro Tem Pavakwa.
Yeah, I guess I really didn't get my question answered, maybe primarily from Chief Schettenhelm. Do we foresee if nothing else, an opportunity cost in regard to policing these spaces that will be public space adjacent, with alcohol, with more activity, in theory might need more policing by the department? Would we need extra man hours in theory, and or what is the opportunity cost? Are there going to be areas we can't cover because we're covering this? Your thoughts?
Chief, you can answer.
Sure. I don't believe it would cause us extra issues. I think the biggest factor that can help with that is setting a time, which I believe outdoor dining ends at 11 o'clock. So that would be the biggest thing that I think would help curtail that. But based on the nature of our restaurants and that, I don't see that to be a particular issue.
Okay. Thank you.
Want a motion?
Christy, you have a comment?
I was just circling back to Nancy's idea about using the alleys. The concern with the alleys is that that's where most businesses get their deliveries. So there's giant semis in there most of the time. So to build something in the middle there might be challenging. Not to mention that if you think Main Street's fast, try the alleys sometimes.
Yeah.
People come flying through them. I don't think that they would be expecting all of a sudden to come upon a deck. The other thing that I would say is that if Main Street is the only impediment to all these ideas that we shared, then certainly let's talk about that. And maybe we just try to work on these off Main. I mean, that's the only concern that I'm really hearing is about Main Street. I just don't want to throw the baby out with bathwater. I guess where I'm going.
I don't either.
Right. So, yeah, and just my comment, I'm all for this. I'm all for eliminating the red tape. Let's do whatever we can. I guess I walked Main Street this weekend, and I guess I have the same concerns as some of the other council people. It'd be very hard for me to vote to put those on Main Street. And I have the utmost respect for the chief, but I mean, it just doesn't really pass the eye test. That's right out in the street. So I guess I'd be uncomfortable with that right now. So Councilmember Peterson, you had a...
Oh, no, I already spoke. Thank you.
I thought you had a motion. No?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Well, I was going to make a motion that we move forward with the request once we have everything from the police chief, city manager, and attorney.
So is that with Main Street or without Main Street?
No, I would say with Main Street, but because everyone is apprehensive of that, I want this to move forward as quickly as possible. So I will do the motion without Main Street.
Okay, so there's a motion by Councilmember Peterson.
I'll support the motion, and I would request that the DDA look at and maybe look at ways to bring back Main Street with parklets to make us feel more comfortable, but let's at least get this moving.
Okay, and then city manager, what is the criteria then that they would have to meet?
So I would work with our attorney and with the police chief. And I think the chief's, I can't see in the light there.
If I could just make one suggestion that might work here, and with Christie's help here, the biggest hurdle before we get past anything is whether MDOT would approve any concept that would be out on Main Street. Obviously, we all have reservations about what that would look like. But one thing that we may consider is if the DDA would put together this tentative concept that they have planned, pick a location on Main Street, submit that to MDOT to see whether they would approve it or not, we would at least get us past that hurdle, and then we could come back and make that decision whether that could be repeated. At least we would know the answer to that. It would not involve liquor. It would not involve any of our restaurants being kind of on the hook for anything. It just would be a way for us to kind of test the waters, if you will, and see if MDOT would approve it based on really what's the smallest and less harmful of any of these concepts to have it out on Main Street. Just as an idea.
I like it. It's like a proof of concept.
Is that separate from the motion? Is that
that could be a condition of the motion. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'd definitely like to clarify that, because during the earlier part of the discussion, I got the impression this is already MDOT approved. So if that's not the case, we definitely need to clarify that.
No, it was stated that we would have to get MDOT approval for actual on Main Street. I guess I go ahead, Mayor.
I'm sorry. I thought that MDOT hadn't approved it, but they made comments that they might be more open to that. Christy?
That's exactly correct. The way you stated it, Mayor, that's exactly what they said to me.
Okay, so they haven't approved it, but they think that maybe it will be. Councilmember Keithley.
Would there be an end date to this as well? Because if I'm understanding correctly, and please let me know if I'm wrong, is the motion allowing us to go forward with this concept? Would it be, would that take away the planning approval, this going to planning commission for approval, as well as having a public hearing?
Yeah, yes, there would be, we would be waiving that. City manager, we'd be waiving that, and then it would be administrative approval. They would have to submit plans and things to city administration, and then they would have the ability to sign off with it without it going to planning commission or having public hearings.
So I would, I guess, request that some sort of end date be put on it.
Good point.
Okay. Christy, question?
Just for that, we wanted it to mirror exactly what the outdoor dining limit is for the year, because there is a certain outdoor dining season, because the parklets would just be temporary. They would also be picked up and moved. So Nick, what's outdoor dining deadline this year? For
ours is October 30, however many days are in October. But we always ask them to take down their fences and get rid of all that stuff the Friday before Halloween. So we don't mess up the whole, if we're allowed to do that this year. So I would say the weekend before Halloween, whatever date that is, which would be October 21st.
Councilmember Keithley?
24th.
So I think that would be a great date to associate with the motion. And if we end up having a great fall and you want to extend it, I think that would be wonderful too. The longer we can be outside, the better.
Ben Giovanelli, comment?
Oh, I need to know when to stop selling, and I can stop selling. So I think.
So we have a motion now without Main Street, and then DDA is on their own going to go to MDOT and see what they can get. Is that what we're talking about?
I thought we were going to have them do a proof of concept for Main Street.
Ben, you had a
yeah, just so to get some clarification. So we're okay to go forward, getting the administration to put together that punch list for what it will take to get administrative approval, and going through. I don't want anybody to feel like they're having an end around done on them. So deal with planning, deal with legal, deal with all that. We will on a separate track. So that would be spots on, let's say, all the streets except for Main Street, right? The Main Street one, we'll put together a 2-spot parklet idea. We'll pick at random a spot. We'll go ahead, just like the picture I showed you from Dallas, we'll do something like that. We'll pitch it to MDOT and get their bounce. And then we'll report back to council as soon as we get information on that one. So that would sort of be the 2-track that I think we're looking at, if that would be okay.
So then the motion council. So again, to summarize the motion, it's to approve the streamlined process for everything except Main Street, and then DDA is going to do a separate track to MDOT and then come back to us with an answer. Is that
and with an end date the weekend to Halloween.
Right. Councilmember Albrecht.
Yeah, I think what we're talking about tonight is the process, and to expedite the process, I'd like to see the DDA come back with at our next meeting. Where are these locations going to be? I'm sure they've started thinking about where we should map them out, including if it gets approved by MDOT, where you'd put them on Main Street. And with the consideration that everybody's brought up, there may be some safer areas on Main Street to put a parklet than where people are driving up, going above 25 miles an hour. There's certain areas where there's like cutouts or things of that sort that might work. So I'd like the DDA to bring back to us, okay, here's the city map. Here's where we're going to put a couple on this street, these side streets. If we did get Main Street, here's where it could be. I think then we'll be a lot more comfortable. I think tonight we're talking about the process to support the businesses, and I support the process. the idea with the fact that more's got to come back from DDA and city administration and the police chief, that here's where they're going to be. Here's why we picked these locations. These are not all for restaurants. These are also for citizens to sit and talk, read, eat an ice cream cone, whatever the case may be. But I think tonight's we should focus on, okay, the motion that Councilmember Peterson is that we want to go forward with these 3 recommendations that what were in the email that we received from the DDA board, and vote on that tonight. So I support the motion as presented.
Okay, so Madam Clerk, did we have a second?
We did. Seconded.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Bavacqua.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I guess I'm starting to look at this from the Planning Commission perspective. Thinking of, when these requests for outdoor dining have come to Planning Commission and how much scrutiny they get, and a lot of the great questions that are brought up by, people who have a lot of experience doing this, and architects and these other things. I understand the need to get rid of red tape and all that. But it is a little concerning to me that, we're just going to skip over that process and have it be an administrative and council function. But beyond that, I guess I'm concerned that, well, first of all, the DDA, are they going to be in charge of managing all of these requests for outdoor dining that are going to come from us passing this? Is that the funnel? Or are we going to get these, individual business owners just petitioning administration that they want to do something and it's their concept, and then administration is going to be presenting it to council?
Mr. City Manager, you want to comment on that?
I think Christie's actually worked out some of those details. So, Mayor, if you don't mind, I'll defer to Christie.
Sure. Yeah, because again, we want to try and streamline on our end as well. So our idea was, and we'll be talking about this with DDA tomorrow night, is that we would then work with city administration, put together exactly what Ben was saying, that punch list of what's the process. Here's all the things that you need to provide. We would then work with the restaurants, find out who's interested in pursuing any of these, identifying locations, all that good stuff, and try to bring it to the city as a package so that administration wouldn't be having to chase down this restaurant, this one didn't understand, that kind of thing. So we're trying to then, we'll be helping the businesses on the back end, trying to make sure that they are fulfilling all of the guidelines and requirements by ordinance, then bringing everything to the city going through everything, making sure that everything is exactly the way it should be, and then ultimately bringing it to council for their final approval on everything. So we're going to try and streamline as best we can, so we're not trying to make more work for city administration.
But what if a business says, I don't really like the DDA's concept, I just want to do it on my own, I'm going to petition administration?
Well, I guess that's up to you guys. If you choose to go forward with this, you could say that the DDA is the funnel, is the the coordinating group that they have to go through, or you can say that all the restaurants have to go on their own. I would personally think that coming through us probably would be the better of the two, but I see my chairman has something to say, so I'm going to step back.
Ben?
No, that's fine. The idea is that we come up I had envisioned the administration owning this. I don't want the DDA to be involved in deciding who's going to get these things and who's not. I wanted us to have it where, okay, if you met all of this criteria, you're approved. And just like Nick has with the sign ordinance, the same type of administrative approval. So the DDA is not going to be the decider of who gets a spot and who doesn't get a spot. We're just trying to coordinate the businesses and get all that information together. We're trying to be the firewall for the administration, so there's not a deluge. And like I said before, I don't want anybody's nose to get out of joint, because I know that every board and commission and every department has a role to play in this. I just think that the time is not on our side. So I want to try and get it so that everybody's as happy as they can be. What I don't want to have happen is us to get in a situation where each individual restaurant has to come before council. They're having to wait till the second and fourth Monday, and that's got to go to planning, and then it's got to go through all the stuff. And then they say, well, we don't like that. Come back next meeting. And then 2 weeks later they come. It's just not that's not going to work in this current reality. So I'm just looking to streamline that. That's all. But my thought is the administration would be the arbiter and saying, yes, you met the criteria, box checked. But that package would be coming before council one last time, and that would not be coming from Ben or Christie. That would be coming from the administration saying, these are the things we need to have have done before you qualify for this. And all the DDA is going to do is just sort of be the gatherer of information and sort of facilitating that with the businesses that are interested. That's the only thing that we would be involved in.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor, it's Nick. So this is no different than I just did this spring. You guys gave administration the right to approve outdoor dining for up to 3 years, and that's me. Dwayne assigned it to me, and I did it, and I've done a million of these, so I know the criteria. We'll build a template. That's my job, economic development. I'll meet with whoever wants to do it, whether it's the DDA parklets, which are not a restaurant necessarily, or the restaurants, and we can get it done quick. And I've been doing them, so it's nothing new. It's not a big deal.
Mayor Pro Tem Babakwa.
Weren't those that they got renewals?
They were, yes.
Right. It's gone through the planning commission, and then for 3 years, we can administratively review the ones that have already gone through if there were not changes.
Okay. Right, if they wanted to change anything, yeah, they had to go to planning commission. But the same criteria will be handled. Mayor
Pro Tem Babakwa.
I guess if these are going to come in a package, which I think is a great idea, I would like to see at least a planning commission meeting, or if we have to put together a joint Zoom planning commission council meeting or something, just to have folks that, spent a lot of time and years looking at these things, adding their perspective. I don't know that it would add necessarily extra, time if it was done properly. I just don't want us folks, a group of us that haven't dealt with this a lot, in terms of, foot traffic and the architecture of this stuff and other issues that we may not understand, approving these without a quick check with the planning commission. My thought.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes, Senator McMorrow actually was very enthusiastic tonight, letting us know how the state legislature has been working diligently to take care of this segment of, society of business that has, really been hit hard. And I actually believe that everything we're talking about right now is actually being implemented in these Senate and House bills to help us do what we need to. I know the Michigan Municipal League, because I sit on their municipal administration committee, that we've been talking about this here, and I let them know that, the DDA here has been, working to find ways to help businesses come back and get back to, business. So I think that I appreciate everyone's concerns. I think that we're getting one step further ahead than what Senator McMorrow was actually letting us know earlier today about how these things are actually taking place at the state to allow the leniency to happen so we can do things. And this is what, and it's very important that we don't lose sight of that. I know all the liabilities in that, and that's why we do rely on the administration and the chief and everyone else involved to do that part. So I'm confident that, they're going to have the best interest in mind to move this forward. And if this was a new business that was coming into town and things like that, then I would see that, going to the planning commission, going through all those steps would be necessary. But those who have currently been doing this, and a lot of our restaurants, we're not going to have areas that they can actually go and do anything because of where they're located. Some of them have it easier than others, but on the DDA and PSD meetings, our restaurant owners were talking about how they don't want to get, in the whole mix up of all this alcohol part that is more the liability. Very, very, cognizant of that. They were, I can't explain it any more than just, it was all very good coming from our own business owners downtown. So that's all. Thank you, Mayor.
So a suggestion I have maybe is city administration comes up with a criterion list, maybe sends that out to city council for comment, maybe send it to the planning commission members for comment. But at the same time, we're maybe in a crisis, so we don't have, if we're trying to expedite this, Maybe that's a way to try to, meet it both ways. We keep the process moving, but at least then everybody can kind of see the criteria, see what administration's doing. Is that something, city manager, that you could come up with?
Definitely, and I do want to note that Attorney Kratz had his hand raised. I know electronically, and I think a few times he's kind of motioned too, so he might have something to share as well.
Attorney Kratz?
Yes, I think that what we should do is to have a resolution brought before City Council. We've already worked on one that mirrors a lot of what Birmingham, their template was, because you're making decisions that that are going to be waiving some of the outdoor dining processes. So I think what we can do is put together a little bit of a background why you're doing this, allow it to happen, put forth in the resolution these criteria that you're now going to have administration enforce. So City Council, I think tonight's motion is a fine one to get the process started, but I think the check the box, it would be to bring back at the next City Council meeting the resolution that encapsulates all of the restrictions that you've been talking about, just so it's a nice and easy. That can be handed to Planning Commission if that's the desire, and then that'll allow administration to have a document that says, yep, City Council allowed us to do it this way, to give the administration cover and the authority by way of resolution.
Okay, so Christy, is that fast enough?
Well, I guess my question, and this is for Attorney Crott, if we come back, then it would be June 8th. So in the 2 weeks between then and now, we can't do anything?
Well, you can do things now. I know that the expansion of outdoor dining was for certain regions in the state. You may have additional information that I do, but is the expansion of outdoor dining?
I get where you're going. Let me take you on my journey. So if we come back to council on the 8th with this resolution, somewhere in this point between now and hopefully by the end of June, we're going to know when our restaurants can open. I still have to get to them, pitch this idea to them, get them to come up with their own ideas, show them the criteria, then come back and get another approval. And then they have to start to procure the items and fabricate. So it's not that you guys sign off and then magically all these wonderful outdoor dining places appear. So I that's why when we're talking about expedited, I appreciate you guys trying to work with us, but as you go, if you kind of go through that, if it's the 8th and then it comes back to council, I don't know that Nick can turn them around on the 22nd, if we can even get back to you guys. So then we're looking at July. So then we're looking at fabrication of a couple weeks. We might not even be doing this to the end of July, beginning of August. And that is too late.
Yeah.
Our businesses, I appreciate they're not open now, but it's coming. It's a coming.
Councilmember Sage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Christy, I'll address that directly, and I appreciate your comment. So as we're trying to expedite this process, I guess we need to ask you to expedite your process. So as the motion stands right now, we will temporarily expand the current outdoor dining ordinance to include parking spaces. Okay, we've now determined that would be outside of Main Street. We've temporarily expanded the current outdoor dining ordinance to include park gates in that same areas. Temporarily modify the existing outdoor dining approval to be an expedited process through city administration and council approval. Great. I support all those. What is missing here is the guidelines then for which Attorney Crott then just said we need a resolution to codify, if you will. So help us help you. Let's get to that point, and maybe we can expedite this beyond or even before the next council meeting. So that's the big piece here that I think that is missing.
Well, my understanding is that we're using the city's outdoor dining guidelines, and we can certainly add to that, and I can have that back to you almost immediately. We're having DDA tomorrow night. It would be no problem.
Great. But I would also love to, Mayor Pro Tem Balakwa's comment, how about input from the, from the DDA, from legal, from the Planning Commission, from administration, from the City Council? All those factors need to be part of the input.
Councilmember Keithley.
Thank you. I hear the other council members' points. I hear Mayor Pro Tem Bavacqua. I think that that's very important to have and go through these processes. But I think that we are operating under emergency circumstances right now. This is incredibly vital to keep our downtown businesses open. And I would just say that I know that you feel the same way, but just for myself to reiterate, I trust our administration. I trust that our DDA will do their due diligence and go through the processes to make sure that the criteria make sense and make sense for our community. And I feel a real sense of urgency to get this done and to get this done now, because we have to be progressive. And I think we've done that as a council throughout this crisis so far. And I think that supporting this tonight would be another move in the right direction, even though all the details aren't worked out yet.
So we have a motion on the floor. As Councilmember Sage said, to move forward with this, not waiting the 2 weeks. I guess what Attorney Crock talked about, that we've said everything that was proposed except for Main Street. So we have that motion on the table. You know, do we want to vote on that now? I mean, is there anybody else have any comments before we vote? I mean, I think we've gone around on this a lot.
Mr. Mayor,
Attorney
you know, we all have our lanes that we ride in, right? So when I have the attorney lane that I check the boxes in, if City Council wants to move forward with the motion tonight, what my recommendation would be is at the next meeting to still bring back a resolution to affirm what you just did. I mean, it doesn't have to, you know, I didn't think 2 weeks, considering the discussions we've had offline, was that long. But if that's not workable, then we would take and encapsulate your whatever motion it is and what the discussion we've had, and we'd bring it back for City Council. And if DDA needs to move forward and instruct businesses on what just happened with that level of uncertainty or gray with the administration is going to have to do, that I'm not trying to stand in the way of that.
Attorney Crock, we wouldn't want it any other way from you. Councilmember Salvia.
Yeah, so my thought for Christy from a timeline standpoint is, in the next 2 weeks, you're going out to all the business owners, the DDA, saying, council's heading in this direction. We're going to dot every I and cross every T, but start running so that when and hopefully we get the approval, they can run, they're ready to procure materials and go, because summer is short in Michigan. So we do need to move, but I do appreciate the input and the thoughts and where we're at right now on this.
Councilmember Sage.
So to clarify that, so we're going to run under the existing outdoor dining ordinance provisions to move forward with the businesses outside of Main Street parking spaces.
Yeah, unless city administration wants to add something, because it's a little different, but if they do, let us know, I guess. Let the council.
Yeah, I think the expedited way, instead of bringing them back in a bunch or a group, would actually to have administration actually look at them to make sure they meet the criteria. Bringing them back extends the timeline. And I think what I'm hearing is, you know, the timeline's short, so we're not trying to extend it. So, you know, if it meets the criteria, we would check off the box. We also have a planning commission meeting on June 1st. So, you know, depending on, you know, the action taken by council tonight, I'm happy to, before the agenda goes out tomorrow, to add this onto their agenda. You know, that's in basically 5 days. So we can update them, get any comments and that sort of stuff. And then I think is where Attorney Crott was going, is to encapsulate that for the final signature and dot the I's and cross the T's on June 8th meeting. And then it's basically done. But, you know, we'd be able to move forward based on tonight's vote, if it's positive, with this recommendation and the criteria, giving the authority to administration to engage the current outdoor standards when we're reviewing.
Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem Bavacqua.
Yeah, I do appreciate that. Any effort that we can make to get as much detail as possible in front of the Planning Commission before the next meeting so that it could be discussed, just in case there's something we're just not seeing because we're so focused on trying to achieve these, great goals. Sometimes it just helps to get a little bit different perspective on things. So I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilmember Keithley.
And and maybe it was already happened, can we amend the motion to include that end date?
Yes, that was in the motion, I think.
Perfect.
Last comment, Ben Giovanelli.
Yeah, I know, the horse is dead. But I did want to offer up that if Christy, Nick, and I needed to come before the Planning Commission, if you guys want to wedge us into the agenda, we'd be more than happy to do that. And I think that's probably warranted in this case.
Yeah, and that's great. I mean, I think really the planning, more just looking at the design and, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Yeah, like I said, I don't want anybody's nose to get out of joint. I want everybody to feel like they've got some skin in the game, and there's nothing worse than trying to put together a plan when everybody's on board because they end up undermining it. And I'd rather not have that if we can avoid it.
Without further ado, Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Vixen,
Yes.
Bavacqua,
Yes.
Albrecht,
Yes.
Keithley,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Sage,
Yes.
Salvia.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you to Ben and Christy. Thank you for everybody. I think that was a good start.
Indeed. Thank you, Council. And once again, I'll offer up 7 o'clock tomorrow night. If you guys are bored, come on by. We won't have cocktails, but you're welcome to have them at the house as you watch us. So thank you. Appreciate it. Bye now.
Okay. Next, we're on to mayoral appointments of boards and commission members. City clerk can read those off, but if not, you can vote on them individually or you can vote on them all together.
Correct, Your Honor.
Councilmember Peterson?
I just think that since they're in the pack, we vote on them.
Okay, you
individually.
So motion by Councilmember Peterson.
What was the motion?
I'm sorry, say that again. You kind of went out a little bit, at least on mine.
Oh, okay. A motion to approve the mayoral appointments as presented.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Peterson.
I support.
Support by Councilmember Salvia. Discussion? Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Vixen,
Yes.
Bavacqua,
Yes.
Albrecht,
Yes.
Keithley,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Sage,
Yes.
Salvia.
Yes.
And I just thank you. And I would just say for both mayoral appointments and city council appointments, we're still looking for people for those. Madam Clerk.
Yes, Your Honor, and Councilmember Salvia has, and council as a whole has asked for a detailed listing of which boards still need people, and I am working on that. We'll get that for you, and we'll advertise back out on the website.
Thank you. And next on to city council appointments of boards and commission members from the last meeting.
Motion to approve as presented.
Motion by Councilmember Peterson.
Support.
Support by Councilmember Sage. Discussion? Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Vixen,
Yes.
Bavacqua,
Yes.
Albrecht,
Yes.
Keithley,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Sage,
Yes.
Salvia.
Yes.
Is Stuart gone again?
Yep.
Okay.
I think he froze.
Yep.
Okay. So where were we? Oh, I guess it's to me.
Yeah.
I'm going to receive a report from the various boards and commissions. And the first one is Planning Commission. And we had a meeting with only a couple items on the agenda. The first was we had a risk management refresher. Just kind of talking about our roles on Planning Commission and the things we need to consider when making our determinations. So that was nice. Next item was discussion on infill development and some changes we might want to make, some issues that may be occurring based on our current ordinances, kind of an in-depth discussion on all of that. feel free to watch the tape, but it's an ongoing discussion. We're looking at things like lot coverage percentages and objects protruding from a structure into the side setbacks and rear setbacks, and how it impacts neighbors, and when construction of those things impact neighbors, and how to manage it, and just a whole plethora of issues. What happens to stormwater runoff when we hardscape a vast percentage of our properties? So it's all just discussion, and we're going to continue it, and perhaps at some point make some adjustments if necessary. And then there was some updates from Nick during miscellaneous. I don't know if he wants to touch on any of that in this forum or not, but that was about it.
Nick, any comments?
Take that as a no.
Take that as a no.
Last part, Dean, sorry.
Oh, I just said you had a bunch of comments and miscellaneous at the planning commission meeting. I'm not sure if you wanted to touch on any of that in this forum, or if you're okay.
I think there was just like potential future development, so I won't mess your minds up with that until at least I have a concrete something to get you excited about. How's that?
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Thank you. All right, next a report of the Paint Creek Trailway Commission, Councilmember Sage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple things. We discussed reestablishing the bike patrol function, and that discussion led into different facilities along the trail and the municipality's ability to provide sanitation. So, case in point, on our portion of the trail, we have a bike station, repair station, and we obviously have public restrooms. The trail's looking for some kind of guidance from us. Are we going to sanitize those areas, and so they can provide an update on their website? I didn't know the answer to that, so I guess I'm looking for some guidance on that, what our plans are going forward. And the second was, I know we've made a commitment to do the trail resurfacing when it's feasible. And one of the comments was that whatever process or equipment that Rochester Hills used, that was ideal, apparently, that portion of the trail. So if we can just reach out to them and say, all right, what'd you do? How'd you do it? If we don't have the equipment, can we borrow it and do the same on our portion?
Very good. Mr. City Manager, are we sanitizing? How are we doing all that stuff? Or is that still in progress?
I will check on the trails for our bathrooms at our municipal park. We are actually sanitizing those. Okay. So the big bathroom and then the Lions, those have been, and the comfort station have been included in the sanitation. I will have to check along the trail.
Okay, so that bike repair spot between Griggs and Albertson on the cut into the park.
Yeah, so that hasn't been part of I guess a cleaning or sanitation that we've done.
Okay.
Yes.
Let me know if it's to be added to the list so I can tell the trail.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Very good, thank you. Next is receive a report from the RAH Board, Councilmember Albrecht.
Thank you, Mayor. We had our first Zoom meeting on May 13th, and much of the discussion outside of normal business was on the impact of the shutdown on our 2020 revenue, 2020 budget, excuse me. As of, we ended the year 2019, December 31st, 2019, with a fund balance of $365,000. The assumptions we are looking at is that expenditures for the year, the current budget was 2.6 million. We revised that to be 1.4 million. Using that as the number, we've expecting the fund balance at the end of 2020 to be around that same number. The challenges we have right now in terms of revenue are that the state has provided really no guidance to health clubs or facilities like that we operate. We have cut down staffing dramatically. We have 3 people working. The rest of them were furloughed early on. We did that early on. So we've controlled costs that way. We've reduced costs to where we're spending about $80,000 a month. But really, you can't expense your way to the bottom line. We have to get revenue back in place. We did have the ability to use video dance lessons, which gave us back some revenue. But the challenge we have right now are summer camps, baseball, all the outdoor activities, people coming into the facility. And again, there's been no guidance on that. And even when it comes, we know it's going to be very, very restrictive. So more to come on that. We'll have our next scheduled meeting in June, and I'll report back at that time. You lose the mayor again?
Yep, looks like it. He's jumping back in. You're on, Mayor.
I apologize, you guys. I'm ready to kill somebody, but or throw something. But
okay.
To the downtown development, Councilmember Peterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I'm not going to reiterate everything you heard because there's been a lot going on. There's a new historic sign partnership opportunity that Christy has been and the DDA have been working with Patrick McKay out at the museum. So there'll be more details on that, and I'm not going to go into that right now. Details of the future.
Okay.
On the Main Street Oakland County updates. Hello?
Yeah,
yep,
we can hear you.
Oh, I thought somebody said they couldn't hear me. Okay. That's been moving along. The Main Street Oakland County program has really been outstanding in helping all the downtown's main streets, flourish during this time. Nick and Christy also was taking an inventory of the open spaces, so that they'll have in the future to go with all of this outdoor space, dining and spaces. And also Marilyn brought up really cool ideas about placement of furnishings in outdoor spaces. So hopefully here in the future, we'll have more details. I don't have the minutes from this meeting as we just met this past Wednesday. Thanks.
Very good. On to new business for referral and miscellaneous. Mr. City Manager.
Yep. So the check register reports are from 5/8, 5/15, and I think 5/19. And then for my miscellaneous, again, the mayor, did a pre-recording. Hopefully everybody was able to see that for the acknowledgement for the memorial message. We had staff from 3 departments, from police, fire, and from finance, assisting Midland with the flood crisis. Want to reiterate that the compost and wood chipping is available over at our Public Works, and Dial a Dump has started. I'm sure Christy or somebody else will put a full plug in, but Farmers Market will have additional information on the safety and the other guidelines that will be in place for the Farmers Market that will be opening on the 30th. And if we can pull up Marcy to share her screen, there's been some questions in the past about what has the city's efforts actually been. And I asked the finance department, and Marcy and Anthony did a nice quick PowerPoint that I'm sure Marcy can very quickly go through.
Welcome, Marcy.
Thank you. You said quickly. That was the kiss of death for me here. Let's see.
Right.
Oh, I think I got it now. All right, here we go. All right. So, the DDA, they do such a wonderful job sharing their marketing prowess, really, and their ideas with the public. The city does a lot as well. We just don't have that same marketing arm. So we're proud tonight to go through a lot of the opportunities that the city council has allowed the city to do in response to the COVID crisis. So our dedication is to proactively implement steps that will help the residents, businesses, and our city employees with the facing of the challenges that COVID-19 has thrown in our wake. So that said, Rochester's here to help, and how does the city government help? So just tonight, the council went ahead and completed the third of 3 cycles for waiving of the 2-week grace period for the water and sewer penalty. So that is this section over here. My screen is.
Yep. Nope. You're fine.
Okay, can you see that? Yep. So Blaine went through and he explained what the actual impact, dollars and cents wise, for council's approval of that 2-week grace period. And we're estimating that it's going to cost less than $1,000, but it's helped quite a few people, giving them just a little bit more time to pay their water and sewer bill. The long-term economic impact, and Councilperson Salvia reached out to Anthony and I today and asked for greater clarification on what is this $917,000 possible impact. When we look at worst case scenario, if the COVID crisis were to continue until the end of the calendar year, December 31st, we anticipated that our revenues would be down by approximately 20% on the water and sewer billing. So that's just a worst case scenario estimate of the impact if the COVID revenues that the city would bring in would continue to the end of the calendar year. That's in an estimate of 20% down on both the water and sewer. Right now, we're running at about 5% down on the well water revenue and about I think about 7.5% down on Detroit water. Now sewer is tied to the usage of the water, so those would be equivalent if you compared the water and sewer as a combined unit. We bill in arrears for the utility billing, so the full impact of what's happened with the crisis, we haven't realized that. That'll be coming in the next 3 to 4 months. But right now we're conditionally optimistic that we will not hit in this area, but we want you to know worst case scenarios. That's why that number is in there. We've gotten council approval to waive parking fees. Right now, the impact is estimated to be around $572K. If it were
Oh no.
That's not me this time, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Blaine?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I know somebody had to do that for me, so I'll just, this is a tag team effort. So what Marcy here, pulled up is, council already knows. We waived the parking fee tonight, accepted the DDA's contribution covering the PSD, which is almost the 300,000. We've also waived the transaction fees that go through our, computers. As her screen just jumped, I'm going to pull up mine here and see if I can share mine, unless she's jumping back in.
Yeah, we're probably good unless you had other slides.
Yeah, she did have a few, but
okay.
Again, let me just summarize and say they're in our packets from page 90 through it's about 98. Listing everything what the city's done from our virtual meetings, our Ready Rochester messages that are going out weekly, information going through our website, the cooperation with local governments, our neighbors, the county, the state, working with FEMA. The reopening committee, the coffees with the mayor, our partnerships with groups from RARA, OPC, library, the school district, and the list goes on and on. she actually listed out, each letter kind of, transparency. That was kind of what we're doing there, as well as accountability, how we're communicating with our staffs, with the homeowners associations, with our residents, how we're preparing for the City Hall to reopen. What we're doing is we're remotely functioning, and then there were some reporting components that finance is providing, weekly updates, as well as how we're tracking. So again, the full packet is
come back.
Oh, you did. I kind of just
quick, Marcy. Welcome back.
Okay, you know what? That was probably a little bit like hurry it along, girl. But so would you like me to pick it up from there, or just move on down?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, Marcy, if you just want to. So I kind of covered a little bit of this, and maybe just say, transparency, and these are some of the things that we're doing.
Sure. So we've got the Ready Rochester. Stuart's been great having those virtual meetings with the mayor. We're working with our community partners. We've gotten the task force, the reopening advisory committee that's been created at Blaine's direction. Other things that are happening within the city is keeping the communication as prompt and as in-depth as we can. Updates to council and staff, EOC meetings every single day, weekly updates to council where we're at. Thanks to the city council for approving the dedicated grant writer for us to explore other options for grant funding. All of these things are helping us address economic concerns. One of the other things that I don't know has gotten enough press, but it's really an important one in my opinion, is that the city has an RFP, a request for proposal from a sanitation service provider, and that's available not just to the government at City of Rochester, but that's also available to public and private industry, and that's on our website. The pricing and the information, the different providers, it's available at.
Oh, did we lose Marcy again?
Lost Marcy again.
Okay. So the specific page that it's on is our Rochester MI/open. That information, along with our Ready Rochester information for signing up, is there, along with the 4 subcommittees. What finance did is they did a request for proposal, got a number of companies, let's just say maybe 15 from around the area to provide sanitation and cleaning services. So that's what she was talking about there. So, Mayor, if you're okay, I guess the final other ones where she's going to be talking about is the reporting component, the services that we've continued to perform, staff services remotely, police and fire have been operating, and then public works when we pulled them back. And then there's the various financial reports and supplemental information that's included in the remaining part of her presentation, which started on page 90, but the supplemental start on page 98.
Very good, thank you. And Councilmember Sage?
Just a quick question. I appreciate the finance department doing the worst case scenario estimates. Have they also done the same exercise with the tax revenue collection through the end of the year?
Yeah, so when we were going through for the budget that would start for July 1, we did that whole assessment. So I can work with Marcy and Anthony to, with my upcoming manager's report, kind of get into kind of a calendar year versus the 2 fiscal years, so that we can, update council on what we're projecting, for revenue side as well on the taxes.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Sorry, Marcy.
Marcy,
okay.
I punted and ran through your slides really quickly.
Yeah, no problem.
Misery loves company tonight. I guess. Councilmember Keithley. Councilmember Keithley?
Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't see Marcy jumped back on. If she had anything to add, I'd hand it back to her.
Well, I don't want to try again. So
Okay. Well, I just wanted to say, Marcy and the finance team, thank you for the presentation. I think the city has been very proactive in the efforts to combat and respond to the new challenges that we're facing. And I really appreciate this report. I'm sorry you weren't able to get through all of the details, but I know that you guys have done a lot and it really shows.
Yes. I think the city council can be very proud of. We've done pretty much all we can, and we'll continue to do that. Anything else, Mr. Manager?
Nope, those are my updates for tonight.
Okay, City Clerk?
Councilmember Salvia has asked that I give kind of an overview of our absentee ballot process, since there's a lot of reporting on that in the news right now.
Very good.
What I want to start with, and I'll be brief, but there's a lot of talk about vote by mail versus our absentee process. The states that do vote by mail, their first step is to automatically mail the ballots out to the voters. And any one of you that have done a mass mailing knows that there's always a certain percentage of your mailing that isn't going to get deliverable. So I think that's where concern could be, where if we were sending out our 10,000 absentee ballots right out the gate, and even if it's 1%, that's 100 ballots that go nowhere or get returned undeliverable. So our difference is we send out applications first. So we're making that first contact with those people to make sure that they are where our records say they are. They have to sign that application and return it. The first step that we do at that point is we do verify that signature against the qualified voter file, which is your signature that you signed at the Secretary of State. So it's not as though we are checking signatures that anybody else could have turned in off of a form offline or what have you. Your voter record is directly linked to your driver's license file. So on our screen, I have your signature that you signed as Secretary of State. If those don't match, it's not as though we just put those in a pile and don't do anything with them. The new forms have email addresses, they have phone numbers. We make every effort to reach and contact people if their signature isn't matched, and ask if they did sign that and maybe what was the reason. Sometimes you'll have the elderly that have strokes, you'll have broken arms, you'll have various reasons, but it's at my discretion whether or not I accept that or make them turn in a new one at that point in time. Then once the ballots are sent out and they are returned, that same process happens all over again. They are checked on the qualified voter file, and the signature that is on the outside of that envelope is verified against their Secretary of State signature again. So that if there's any discrepancy between the Secretary of State's and the application, then we need to research that. Police Chief Shettenham can confirm that we've had an instance of that in the past, where a son who was a junior thought the ballot was his, and it was actually sent for the senior. So when that happens with the ballot, then I work with Chief, and he or a detective will actually go out and communicate with that person, and we find out what's up. So it's not as though, I know there's the word fraud is out there a lot these days, and I don't understand how that can be a concern with the process that we have in place. As far as our absentee ballots, our printer got overwhelmed with the printing process. So I'm going to be about a week behind where I wanted to be. I will be sending out over 2,000 applications the week of June 8th. The state is going to be sending out the rest of our 10,000, so they'll be sending out a little over 8,000. They have not provided a date or a time frame for that. Ballots by law have to be delivered to the clerks by Saturday, June 20th. And we have to have them available for voters at that point in time. So I would imagine that they are working on that. And once I hear from them, if we do, then I will let you know. And I think that's all, unless anyone has any questions. And please, as these national stories come about, if you have a question about the process or you want to actually see what we do and where we keep things, please don't let uncertainty cause fear. Come in and ask, and I offer that to residents. When I get someone at the counter who says, "Are these really counted?" I bring them behind the counter. I show them what we do, and I hopefully that alleviates their fear in that they aren't counted. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer, or as we go through this exciting year, I'll hear from you.
Thank you, Leanne. I think you're going to have your hands full this year, but we're
okay. We're ready.
Very good. The two chiefs are Nick. Anything tonight?
I'll just say the community garden opened up with thanks to the DPW guys working with Dino Hill, and we got that open. And there, Jason sent pictures of happy gardeners social distancing appropriately, so that is open. I know that was a concern, and we got that done. And then lastly, I just want to get a legal haircut because my wife told me I look like B. Arthur in the Golden Girls, whoever that is. So that's not good.
You do.
Yeah, that's.
Where are you?
That's probably not good, Nick.
That's probably not good.
Attorney Jeff, anything?
I think B. Arthur is a pretty good example. No, but nothing for me tonight.
Councilmember Albrecht.
I just wanted to congratulate the mayor on his Memorial Day address. It was really done very well, and it was moving. And also our own Vito Pampalona did a memorial address on. He's a Vietnam veteran. He dressed in his dress uniform and everything else like that. So we really honored these veterans that gave their lives or service member that gave their lives virtually and did it very well. So thank you to both Mayor Bixson and Vito Pampalona.
Thank you. And I'd just like to publicly thank Jane Dixon for her help on all this. She's done a really great job in some of these video things and coffees with the mayor and things. So thank you to Jane. Councilmember Keithley.
I'd just like to say thank you for placing the flags at the cemetery again this year. I think that's a really important component to Memorial Day and remembrance. So I am disappointed that I didn't personally get to participate this year like we had in years past, but thank you to the DPW staff for still making that happen.
Thank you. Councilmember Salvia.
Yes, just excited that some of the retail shops started opening today in downtown by appointment, either through Facebook or some of them have doorbells outside. So shop local, love local.
There you go. Councilmember Peterson.
Just a couple things. Just a quick update. From legislatively, House Bill 5766 is the tax tribunal appeals, covers that. It's going to add a section to the Tax Tribunal Act to allow petitioners filing certain property tax appeals to have up to an additional 90 days to file that appeal. And also Senate Bill 940 is just the extension of the principal residency exemption deadline extension, taking that to July 1st now. Also, I want to thank our first responders that did go and help with the devastation of the flooding. I think that was awesome of our first responders and our frontline guys. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Sage.
Just one item tonight, sir. Got notification that the Thursday, May 28th meeting for the Historical Commission has been canceled.
Very good. Mayor Pro Tem Bavacqua.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple little things. First of all, got our community garden plot, first one for our family. We're pretty excited to get out there and get it started. So I'll be working on that probably tomorrow. Also, just a weird thing. Never had this happen before, but actually I got a tick I had to remove. And I've been hearing stuff in my neighborhood about like a lot of tick infestation. So I don't know if it's the weather or what's going on, but just be careful out there. If you're going to be in the woods, if you're going to be, even the kids playing in the backyard with all the deer that are in the subdivisions and so on, just be aware.
Very good. I got a couple. Do we have, Mr. City Manager, do we have any public comments?
There's nobody currently on. Yep.
Okay, very good. A couple things. I was walking with Maria in the cemetery, and I thought the cemetery looked in very good shape, and it looked very good for Memorial Day, like was said, with the flags and stuff. And it was a shame that we didn't have our usual Memorial Day event, because that's very nice and things. But hopefully next year. Just want to remind everybody to practice social distancing. You know, that's very important. And I know as the weather gets nicer, we all want to be out and stuff, but, you know, please be aware of that. And then lastly, coffee with the mayor is Thursday at 5 o'clock, assuming my computer works and my internet works, of course. Again, I apologize. I don't know. I've been in a million Zoom meetings and was in a few of them today and didn't have any problems, but that's it. So we're going to adjourn this meeting, and then we're going to go into closed session. Are we going to return from closed session?
I don't,
No.
Unless there's an action, I don't believe so. I think there's just going to be direction for me. So I think the motion would be to move to go into closed session with no intent to return.
Okay. Motion by Councilmember Peterson. Support by Councilmember Albrecht. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Dixon,
Yes.
Bavacqua,
Yes.
Albrecht,
Yes.
Keithley,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
Sage,
Yes.
Salvia,
Yes.
and Your Honor,
Thank
if
you.
you change
So we're going to adjourn the meeting, and then remember you have to log off and log on to the new thing that Blaine sent you an email. So we'll do that, and we'll come, and I think the closed session